That's good.
He says he enjoys it. I don't know. What the hell are we going to talk about today?
Hold on 1 second. Let's see what I got going on over here. We went to the beach.
I saw that. What was that like?
Oh, hold on. Jen needs her office key. Right here. Yeah, hopefully we'll be meeting back at the office soon. That would be nice. You still nervous?
A little bit.
I need the light on. No, it was good. I mean, there was tons of people down there and not a lot of masks.
Wow.
I mean, in stores, obviously, if you go in a store, you have to wear a mask, but
right.
People were just down there enjoying the beach, having a good time.
So I gotta say, if a month from now we realize that this has spread like crazy in this month, that we've all not really taken precautions, okay, we learned something. I get that. If it doesn't spread like crazy, I think I'm actually really highly confused about how this works. I don't understand. Like, how could it not?
Yeah. I mean, and like I say, here's been maybe it's a justification, or I'll call it an understanding, but my justification has been, I think we were concerned, rightfully so, that it was going to be way worse, that it was going to be really catastrophic. And I mean, it's not like Jen and I, she doesn't necessarily agree with me on this either, but I don't think it is to the extent that they thought it was going to be. And we've done some social distancing, which has helped the hospitals from getting overwhelmed. But ultimately, I don't think it's as deadly as they thought it was going to be. And so at this point, okay, let's say in the next 6 months, we get another 50,000 deaths. I mean, that's still a lot of people. We're still at 150,000 people. But, not to harp on the fucking Republican bandwagon, but we've had years where the flu kills 80,000, 100,000 people, and no one ever seems, why do we not really even give a shit about that? But this we care about, if it was way more deadly and all kinds of people were dropping like flies, and, it had a death rate of even probably 5 or 10%, I would say, oh shit, definitely I should be staying home. I shouldn't be doing any of this stuff. But I think they're still at maybe 1 to 2%. So if 99% of the population is going to be okay, or let's even say 97% of the population is going to be okay, should we really infringe upon the rights of that percentage of the population for 3% that could potentially get sick and die?
Ooh, you've completely flipped on this one.
Yeah, yeah, right. Ooh. Well, yeah, and I guess I've thought of it from I don't know, what if we can just take these things away from people, are they really rights? Like, if we can just all of a sudden tell you that you're not allowed to do this, that, and another thing. You're not even allowed to go to the fucking park and walk in the park. We've now locked down the fucking state park. Like, what are your, I mean, I don't know. It just seems scary about what our rights really are and what we're really are we really a free society, or are we just, when it's convenient, we're better than China, but when it's not convenient, we're just like China. We fucking lock people down and shut down businesses and do whatever we want, take your rights immediately away, and it's just like, fuck, that's kind of scary.
Well, yeah, I guess. I don't know. I've thought a little bit about that. I try not to think about it too much because I don't find it draconian that I'm stuck on Wi-Fi. Like I hear that word thrown around a lot. This is draconian measures, and I'm like, bro, I'm sitting in my house. I got food delivered to my door. Like, this is far from anything that happened in draconian times.
And the truth, like, for us, like, I mean, it's not like I'm like, fuck it, we should be, meeting in big giant groups. And like, we still did all the social distancing stuff, which I did say to Jen, I'm like, I don't know if this is much more different than normal time at the beach, other than all the rides are shut down and shit. But it's not like you go set your blanket up a foot away from the people next to you anyway. You know what I mean? You still go kind of, with us, with kids, we still kind of find a spot away from other people. I mean, you know what I mean? And kids go play in the ocean. And I mean, our kids were down playing in the water. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess the restaurants were all shut down. So we didn't go to any restaurants. We got food takeout.
Right. I guess, I don't know. I've seen some people arguing this, and the whole, you know, the right that the government has to protect first is your right to life. Like, life comes before liberty and happiness. And so if there was ever a war against us or an attack on our land, the government would surely be, their responsibility would be to keep us safe, however that is. It's kind of like making you wear a seatbelt. I mean, we could just let people die from not wearing seatbelts, but we don't. We made it a rule because they have a right to protect your right to life first.
Yeah, I would say the difference with that is driving. Like, I've had that people say that argument with driving. I don't think driving in and of itself is a right. You know, driving is like a privilege. You know, driving a car isn't a right. So things that we do to regulate a right, I mean, to regulate a privilege is to me seems different. The difference here is if you are really concerned and you decide it's unsafe for you to go out and do anything, you have every right in the world to stay home, not go out, practice whatever kind of safe practices you want to do. Whereas now, if you're a person that's really concerned, you're asking for your safety to infringe upon my rights because I don't share that concern. And I should have the right to go out in public. You know, I should have the right to go out and be at a fucking park and, you know, who cares? Walk or fish. You can't even fucking fish. They're telling people you can't go stand out on the beach and fish, you know, and sit in a chair. It's just weird, you know, crazy shit. I mean, should you be able to tell people they can't go in public stores without wearing a mask? I guess so. I mean, I don't think that should be up to the government. I think that should be up to the store. The store should be able to say, look, just like, you know, no shirt, no shoes, no service. Well, my store's decided if you don't wear a fucking mask, we don't want to serve you, and I don't have to. That's not infringing upon your rights. That's my right as a business owner to make that decision. But the government shouldn't be able to tell me that I can't let people come in if they're not wearing a mask. Like, that's where it gets weird to me.
Well, and I wasn't really trying to go for the driving thing. It was really more of like, I don't want to say never, but for the most part, most of us have never experienced any kind of attack on our land. Like, generally, we fight our wars in a far off distant place so that we can hide them. But if anybody ever actually came here, the government could very easily put us on lockdown for our own safety. And
that's been a terrible experience. Ask the Japanese in fucking World War II.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's good, but
you're Japanese and you're here. They attacked us. Fucking, we're locking you in camps. It's for our own safety. Like, that shit still totally, to me, is like totally un-American. Like, totally fucking insane.
I don't know. I saw a post, somebody, I found it real quick, and it was talking about, I don't feel like the government is controlling me. I feel like I'm being a contributing adult to society. And I kind of like that. It's like, I don't feel forced to do these things. I feel like the government has made positive choices to try to help people stay alive. And yeah, I get what you're saying, because I've heard that, like, a lot of people, you know, I have a vulnerable population in my house, so maybe I should not go outside. But why should that affect somebody? Well, somebody else is spreading it. Like, it's still making its rounds more because other people are spreading it, whether they are going to get sick and die from it or not. That's like gun laws. I mean, we you know, we're worried about the guns killing us. That's why we want to take everybody else's gun rights away. It's the same thing. Like, yeah, if your gun might end up killing me one day, I don't want you to have a gun. I don't really give a fuck if that's your right or not.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a slope where it's like, okay, so now we get to take people's rights away to protect other people. Like, I don't necessarily think that's a good idea. I thought that was the whole idea of having these inalienable rights and having freedom and living in a society that wasn't like the government didn't have that kind of control over people. Like you still have the right to wear a mask and do whatever you like, being the responsible citizen, like you were talking about. Well, my understanding is I have the right to be a fucking irresponsible citizen if I decide to. I have the right to not wear a mask, and I have the right to go do these things, and I should have a right to, I mean, again, hey, if someone's out there fucking spitting in the produce aisle in the fucking grocery store, yes, that's assault. You know what I mean? Like I get that. But if I am just going out about my daily life and doing things to try to be just a normal human being, not even an overly responsible human being, but I mean, do we hold people accountable for spreading other colds, flus, viruses? Would we, how many people do you think, just on average, how many people you think maybe have a call for the flu, knowingly know they're sick and have like a flu or something, and still go visit their fucking grandma at the nursing home? You know what I mean? Like they don't think that, hey, I'm going to go in here and take this germ and kill all these people. It's pretty fucking irresponsible. Is that a case now? Oh, now all of a sudden, well, we think they should know better, so we should now charge them with some kind of crime because they're not protecting these other vulnerable people, that they should know the risks of what they're doing without, even knowing it, like without even knowing they might be transmitting this virus. You're still supposed to be accountable as if you have a virus.
And this is where I think it does get a little interesting and different, is if the government, the people we chose to elect, isn't putting this in order, if they're not having stay-at-home orders and quarantines, who is now running your life and deciding for you if you're allowed to stay home or not? Well, the people with money. By default, they're the ones that are going to make the next best decision. Okay, you don't come to work, you're fired. Right? So now people don't have the choice to stay home anymore. So if the government doesn't do their job and protect us, nobody is. And now it's the same reason why the flu spreads. Because if you call out of work for being sick, society and big business has made it look like you're a dick. You're wrong. You're going to get fired. If you call out of your dentist appointment because you realize over the last 8 hours you've gotten sick overnight, you get charged a fee for that. And so we've made it this punishment if you don't show up for these things. Even when you are sick, we've made you out to be weak, right? And so now, if the government doesn't step in and quarantine us, people lose their jobs and shit because they're trying to do the right thing for society. And I don't think they do have that choice that you're saying they have.
Well, we have some of those issues now with, take a place like Amazon, who, if you look at any of the documentaries against Amazon, how terrible they are, they'll tell you that they repeatedly make people work in unsafe working conditions. And like that shit's going on in society in different ways already, where people are forced to work in unsafe working conditions. And if they complain or say anything, the whistleblower thing, they lose their job. So they go in and tolerate these unsafe working conditions because they have to work to pay their families. And what we hope is that as a society, we are, this gets very idealistic, I know, but we hope that we are protecting those rights of those people, that our society is functioning in a way that says, no, we have something called OSHA that's going to come in and say, these are safety standards that you need to meet so that you're not putting these people's health and safety and lives at risk. And if they are doing these things, then you can follow suit, file lawsuits and things like that. That's the protections of the workers. Like you have workers' rights and workers' protection systems in place. Now, if they suck and they fail, that's a different, that's a problem with the society, not necessarily, well, we have to take everyone's rights to accommodate for a shitty system. Like,
I don't know. I think we've proven time and time again that big money is what runs our country, not people, not society.
I'll give you my job right now. So everyone is allowed to take off without fear of losing their job and still able to get a paycheck. Out of 30 people, I'm going to say, 2 have decided to stay home. All the other 20 some people show up for work every day. None of us are doing that out of fear we're going to lose our job or fear that, so the people that, in our case, the people that were allowed to stay home, but the majority of the people that work there don't share this fear, whether right or not. I'm not trying to say it's right or not. I'm just saying, I don't know that society at large is totally scared of going out and going to work. At least not the ones that I see anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you just described, I hope a lot of people have that kind of company to work at. I just doubt they do.
Yeah, well, and that was supposed to be the idea of that Payroll Protection Act. Now, of course, we've heard the fucking fiasco that is. And so that's why my boss is able to do that, because we got, he applied and got some of that Payroll Protection Act money. And so now, and we're actually going to hire a couple people. He said, you know what? Now we can hire a couple people, and we'll have a couple extra people working, because that's what they want to do with that money. They want people working. They don't want people laid off. They don't want people on unemployment. So we're going to do what we can do to get a couple more people fucking, in his version, off of unemployment. We'll hire a couple more people, bring them in, give them jobs. They gave me this money to do that, so that's what I'm going to do with this money, So if big giant Starbucks wasn't taking the fucking payroll protection money, not them per se, but who was it? One of them fucking burger joints, and I don't know.
Who was
anyway?
That? Yeah, I can't remember.
The guy at work was telling me. I can't remember which one of those chain restaurants, and I don't know. It's fucking crazy though. But yeah, I don't know. Like I say, it feels like things are starting to loosen up, and gosh, no matter. If you listen to enough stuff, someone will tell you some kind of contradictory information. So I've heard both things. I've heard that in the states that have opened up, we haven't seen any increases in anything. And then in other cases, I've heard, oh yeah, these states that have opened up, they're having all these negative consequences. So I'm like, I don't know what the fuck to believe anymore.
I mean, there was only, what was it? There was only 14 states where the numbers were going down to begin with when we started opening up. Like there was 27 that weren't testing enough to know, and there was 9 where the numbers were going up. Yeah. So I don't even know what the fuck we were basing opening up on. Yeah, and then
it's hard to tell what numbers they're actually talking about. Like they change, it seems like they change what numbers are important depending on the day. First these numbers are important, then those numbers are important. And that's another thing I told Jen. I said, this is fucking annoying as hell. So like they did a UFC event, and I've actually done a couple of them over the last couple days because they had all these events that got canceled. Now they're trying to catch up. And if you go to one of their events, the one commentator was saying that they give you 2 different kind of tests before you're even allowed to come, like a day before the event. So you show up there, they check your temperature and all that, but then they give you the antibodies test and the fucking test to see if you're actively sick, and they can get all those tests done and all the results back for everybody involved in this event in 2 days. And it's like, I can't even get a fucking test if I want to, let alone, like here's a private company that can go out and get all these tests done in a day. They get all the results back the next day, It's like, what the fuck? Why can't we go get a test? I guess you got to have money.
I'm going to be hugely baffled if this disappears from here. I really am. Yeah. I'm going to understand way less about it and really be concerned about what the truth was about it, because I don't know. That just doesn't, I don't comprehend that. Like we know, we've done tests. We know very few people have actually had it, even though, there's the confirmation bias. We're all like sort of thinking, oh yeah, I had this thing at one point in time and that must've been it. We know that that's not true. We know it's like a tiny fraction of the population that's had it. So if it just disappears, I don't understand. Like we were never going to make it disappear. So if it does, then what the fuck? What? Like, I don't get that at all.
Yeah, and I guess all you can try to do is look at history. And of course, they say this is unprecedented, and I never knew this until the other day. I heard, did you know in 67 or 8, whatever year, the same year as Woodstock, they had the Hong Kong flu that killed 100,000 people? Like that was a thing that went on during the time of Woodstock, and nobody gave a shit. Like it's like, oh well, it's another fucking flu thing going around killing people, and they still had Woodstock and did all that stuff, and millions of people didn't die. So we have had viruses and flus and years where lots of people have gotten sick and died of stuff. So
I don't know that we've had the ways and means to do anything about that before, though. Like this is kind of, I think, unprecedented. Might be the fact that we have the ability for quite a few of us to work from home
they
if we
did all
wanted.
this shit in 1918 when they had that flu. The what the hell did they call that one? The Spanish flu. That's where all these 10 people and all those fake, crazy, shelter in place, like that all came from 1918 when they had the Spanish flu. That's what they did. They didn't know what else to do. So they just fucking told everybody to stay at home.
No, I got you. But I mean, we didn't have the ability to actually like be productive and work from home and do things from home at that point in time. We
Oh,
didn't
you
have
mean,
Wi-Fi.
yeah, like electronically, like
Yeah.
yeah.
Like,
and I still think that's going to change a lot. I mean, I still think a lot of people are going to change and businesses are going to change as a result of this. That should be interesting.
All kind of shit should change. I mean, kids don't really have to have snow days anymore. They can have, online days when it's
Oh,
snows.
yeah, gosh. Yeah, that's true.
It's crazy.
Keep the school calendar right on fucking track. Oof. Weird.
Well, I will
But
definitely.
anyway, yeah, we went down the beach and there was, I want to say, a lot of people down there. It was nice weather and, a lot of stuff is starting to open up. I guess it's sort of confusing, I think, to everybody about what the phase 1 thing means and what places are supposed to open and what things aren't. And
What's 50%?
yeah, what's 50%? I mean, we didn't run into any restaurants that were actually open. Are they allowed to open? Do you
I
know?
don't think so.
I don't know. Yeah, they didn't. There was no restaurants open. Everything was still carry out or whatever. There was a couple places that had some outside eating that again, I don't know if they were supposed to be outside eating or not. And then we saw, like, on the boardwalk, a few of those like souvenir stores and stuff that were opened on Friday that I don't think were really supposed to be open, but they were just like, fuck it, what are they going to do? And I guess nobody really cared because like 99% of the shops on the boardwalk were closed. And every now and again, you'd come across one that was fucking open, and it would be the typical, selling fucking t-shirts and sand crabs or hermit crabs. And, and they would just be open. Like, fuck it.
I guess they'll all be coronavirus theme shirts this year.
Oh, there was a bunch down there. Yeah, there was a bunch of that shit down there. I survived Corona 2020 and shit like that.
Right.
So, yeah.
I don't know. I guess only time will tell. If everything seems safe in a month, 2 months, I'll come out. Till then, fuck all that.
Yeah, staying home, being safe, huh? Yeah, if you can do what you need to do.
I guess. I don't know what else to do. It's like I just can't. I don't understand how it could just disappear. That's my problem. Like I don't get how it could just go away.
So, in your personal thing, are you more worried like you'll get sick and your family will get sick, or that you'll become a transmitter of the virus and spread it to other people, or both?
Yes. It's. I mean, I'd love to sit here and tell you that my wife's 93-year-old grandmother is my main concern because she's most at risk. And I don't want anybody to pass, right? That it doesn't have to. But I think for me, definitely having a kid under 1 is scary to me, right? Like I know tiny people aren't as immune yet or ready for that. Hearing about some people catching weird side effects at the age of 5 has kind of thrown me out. And the fact that, like, while we can say this is like a flu, I've read shit that says it's not like a flu, and we really don't know any long-term consequences of catching it. Like, so we can say, oh yeah, you get through it and over it, but so many people are having different reactions to it. Like, there's people who have symptoms for like a month and a half, and that's fucking really weird. And then there's people who have no symptoms. And
another person on the news today, they said, and I've heard of 2, so I don't know that it makes it the norm, but there was another person that caught it twice, that had it, recovered, caught it again, and died the second time that they got it. Or, and what is that? Did they get it a second time? Did they just never really get over it? but they had tested negative. They had it, tested negative,
Huh.
and then ended up 2 weeks later getting it again and dying, or it coming back. I don't know that they even know what,
Right.
which is
And
kind of
that's
scary,
Exactly. And so for me, I'm like, I'm just going to wait and see, man. I don't have any understanding of how it could go away. And so for me, this means we're opening up because we don't want to ruin the economy forever. And we're just kind of accepting that people are going to get it. And I don't want to get it. I don't want to be sick. Fuck that.
Huh. Oh yeah, and I guess that's different. I've always just went with the like herd immunity is the only way you're going to get through this kind of thing. So I haven't been, I guess, overly concerned about getting it. Like I just think, well, that's the only way you get through something like this. That's the way you get through other colds and germs and viruses, and you got to get a large percentage of people got to get it and recover, and hopefully that'll be what kills. So maybe that's a difference of perspective on. I guess I'm not overly concerned about getting it.
Yeah,
Which maybe I should be. I heard a story of another guy tell a story the other day about getting like a healthy person who got it, and he didn't die, but he fucking said he almost did, and he felt like he was going to. In ICU for like 8 days.
Yeah, exactly. I've heard some pretty ugly stories about what it's like to have it, and just having even if it was like a regular flu, which apparently it's worse, but a regular flu is pretty fucking bad too.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah,
I wouldn't get it on purpose, that's for sure.
Exactly. And so I'm looking at that and I'm like, okay, herd immunity 70%. That's like 7 out of 10. I can wait that out and be the 3 out of 10. I'm good with that.
Yeah, right.
Like, I can avoid that. There ain't nothing out there that's so important. I need it.
Yeah, right.
I don't know. I got a feeling I'll be on the short side of everybody going back too. And I guess it is what it is. I don't know what it is about me that feels like I need to not do that right away, but it'll probably be, 85% of people will be back doing what they always did. And then I'll still be like, well, maybe it's time.
Well, unlike most assholes, like I'm not like I get it, you know what I mean? And like my boss Jimmy's the same way. He's like, I'm freaked out. I'm like, dude, I understand. I mean, sometimes I think I should be more paranoid about it. Sometimes I think I'm, like, fuck, man, am I gonna like, what if I fucking got this and died? Like, what an ass! Like, I would feel like the biggest asshole. Like, if I got it, or if I got it, and brought it home to one of my fucking kids or Jen, and they got sick and died. Like, you think, fuck, that would suck.
And that's like part of, I think, what I think about a lot with people. I'm like, I get it. You want to stand up for, what you believe are your rights or whatever it is. But if this ever hit close to home, I guess that's the only way to change your mind about it, is if it hits closer to home for you. And I don't want people in your family to fucking die to prove a point to you. Like, that's terrible.
Yeah. So that reminded me of a weird way that, like, let's take driving, for example. Like, so I drive with the kids and Jen in the car all the time. We drive up to Massachusetts, make these long trips. I would call myself somewhat of an aggressive driver. I tend to speed. I tend to fucking not deal with traffic very well. Like, I get irritated with traffic and all this stuff. And Jen and I will go in this debate back and forth about, she'll say things like, don't you realize, you're putting the kids at risk, and I'm like, if I am doing this to myself, I think I probably care about keeping myself alive as much or more as keeping my kids alive. So my intention is never to put my kids or her at risk. But I guess in a way I'm still doing that. You know what I mean? Like, my perspective is like, well, yeah, I wouldn't put them in any danger that I wouldn't put myself in. So, I don't know. Maybe that's a irresponsible way to be. Maybe I should be more considerate of them over myself.
I guess
risks
really
I put them at. Yeah.
I think the thing for me is, like, if I got in that accident going 85 and switching lanes, would I later, after they passed, think, damn, I could have done that different and I should have been? Whereas if I got in the accident at 65 in the right lane or the middle lane like trying to be safe and it just happened anyway, would I say, well, you know, it's awful that they passed, but I did this the best I could. Like there's nothing else I could have done.
Yeah.
And so that's how I kind of try to weigh it out. Like, did I do the best I could? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I've definitely gotten better. I mean, in talking to her in that way, I've definitely gotten better. Like now, when they're in the car, I'm in the car with her. For probably the last couple of years at least, like I'll be in the slow lane going, not slow, but definitely not like I used to fucking drive. I used to be very aggressive.
Right.
I've gotten way better and I don't know, maybe part of that's just because I've gotten older. But some of that has been from conversations with her of like, well, fuck, I'm an idiot. And I like to, I don't care about the risk to myself, but I should care about the risk to my family more. You know what I mean? Like, so what? I want to risk my life. They're not asking to risk their life to go 80 mile an hour on the fucking highway. What kind of shit is that?
Like, dude, I remember having my daughters in car seats in the back and I'm, racing around an 18-wheeler, cutting him off and hitting my brakes and brake checking him because I thought he was a dick. Like,
that's the kind of
I'm
shit
not
I
exempt.
used to do. Yeah,
I'm not exempt.
Trying to be like, oh, that's so crazy. Like, it's so nuts. And it's still that's the addict thing. Like we get older, like most kids feel like they're invincible, and then they hit like 19 or 20, whatever, and then they're like, hey, I'm not invincible anymore. And as addicts, I'm like, I'm 45, still like I'm fucking invincible. I can still fucking jump off that cliff and fucking ski down this mountain and jump that hill. Crazy.
That's a good question. What would it take for me to be ready to go back out? I really don't know. I would have to say sustained evidence that things are going away, and probably that the experts are all mostly in agreement. Besides, look, you're always going to have your oddball expert, the 1 out of 10 dentist that doesn't recommend fucking toothpaste.
Right.
Yeah, fuck the guy who doesn't recommend toothpaste. He's an idiot.
Right.
But as long as most people are in agreement that like it's safe and the thing to do, I think that's what it would take for me. And that's going to take, some time to prove. I don't think numbers are necessarily going down.
Yeah. I don't know. That's so hard to tell.
Just stop looking at numbers.
Yeah, I did actually. I catch them occasionally on the news, not even on purpose. Just Jen likes to watch the news in the morning and the news at night. And I stopped looking at all the numbers and I stopped, because again, depending on who you listen to, well, the numbers are going up because they're testing more. And, as they test more, the percentages are coming, and this is all the shit they say. And then like say other people say something different. So I'm just like, I don't know.
I think I read somewhere, and I can't remember. This was so long ago, I can't even remember what the second one was. But it said new cases is really a useless number because of those reasons. But deaths, and there was something else were the only two important ones to look at, and I can't remember what the second one was at all. I don't know. Yeah. No idea. But it was saying that new cases were useless, like because depending on how much you're testing, and that really doesn't mean anything at all.
Yeah. And then what percentage of the population should die before we should be able to do something like this? Like they were talking about that. It's like that. This is one of those like unanswerable questions because there's never going to be an exactly right number, to say, well, if 10% of the population is going to die because of this, then we can enact, take these people's rights. Like, what percentage of death makes extreme,
I guess
how do you put a value on lives? Yeah, it's weird.
When you hate your government, you're talking about your government taking your rights. When you trust your government and love other people and aren't all about yourself, I think then it's just being a good member of society and doing your part. And that's where I get lost. It's like I hear all this screaming about taking your rights. I'm like, can we just do our part? Like, why does it have to be take our rights?
Well, where it got into taking rights was when they tell you, like, say, to just, and I'll use the fishing one. I know there's a bunch of other, like you can't go fishing on the beach. You're not allowed. It's our fucking beach. You can't come on it. My dad lives on a boat. You know, you can't take your boat and go out onto the fucking waterways just to cruise up and down the fucking waterways on his own boat that he owns with no one else. Like, how in the fuck is that putting anyone at risk whatsoever? The fucking, you know, but the Department of Natural Resources will tell you can't be on the fucking water doing any kind of recreational boating, not even by yourself. There was a guy that was in the marina that he lives in. The guy lived in Pennsylvania when all this happened. He said, fuck it, since I'm quarantined, I'm just going to go stay on my boat, fix my boat up for the summer, whatever. They came down, kicked him off his boat, told him he had to go back to Pennsylvania, that he couldn't be on his own boat here in fucking Maryland by himself. Like, those are the cases where they're taking people's rights. Like, those are rights that I don't think are endangering other people or harming anyone else. You know, it's not like these are people asking like, hey, we're fucking having our 5,000 people assembly at the fucking high school. Like, no, these are people that are trying to just live and survive and deal with this shit the best they can. And you're telling them like they can't. And then it's like weird shit like you can fish, but only if it's for food, not for fun. And who gets to make that fucking decision? It's just, it's weird. It's very weird.
Yeah, I'm sending this picture over, not to try to change your mind whatsoever, just to, because I thought it had made some interesting points. I just emailed it to you. I see, that's funny because I've heard some random things that people have done, arrested the father at the basketball court with his son or whatever it was, the ball field. And like, I mean, you know, this happens normally too. If we're going to talk about what happens normally about misinterpretation of the law and people getting arrested that didn't deserve to be arrested, like that happens already. So I don't think that was our intent ever to limit things that probably aren't that dangerous. I don't think that was the intent of the ruling of the law, right? You know, I think sometimes things get misinterpreted. I think people get arrested for shit that's not really illegal all the time and then immediately released because there's nothing to charge them with. And like, I think that happens. And those are like the few cases, not what's generally going on, right? I think what's generally going on is let's practice some safety behaviors of not, you know, gathering in large groups in public, not, hey, no single people can go out on their boats alone. Like, I don't think that was the intent of any of what we're doing. I don't think the governor or the president was like, we're going to fuck these people and keep them from riding their boats around by themselves. Like, that was never the goal, right? Like that, yeah, some flukes happen in the governance of this, but I don't think that was anybody trying to steal our rights. I just think it happened. And so,
yeah, but they didn't try to steal the rights of the Japanese Americans in World War II either, but they still
no,
did
they
it.
definitely
It was
did.
fucking terrible. I mean,
they definitely stole their rights.
Right. But I'm saying this is not very far off from that. I mean, it's telling you have to stay at home in your own house, putting you in essence on what the law actually said was you were in essence supposed to be on house arrest unless it was completely essential. Now people kind of ignored that and they didn't overly enforce that, but that was the fucking law. And any time they could have instigated, you know, a more aggressive approach to that, and you would have not had the legal right to argue it according to, you know, this, you know, whatever protective order or whatever they're calling it.
And they could have, but they didn't.
Right.
Because they were doing what was helpful, not what was being jerks. That's my point. They didn't put us in camps and fence around us and guard us with M16s. Like, they said, hey, please stay home unless you need groceries or to eat or to get out somewhere and exercise. That's what they did. And they didn't really lock people up over it for the most part. And it was just like, hey, do the right thing. We're asking you to.
Yeah, but that's like me asking my kid. I don't know. I think they did actually do that. By making it a law, you actually make it punishable. Like you're making it not, we're asking you nicely. We're telling you this is what you need to do. And we'll decide whether we want to get you in trouble for it or not. But you don't have a choice per se. I mean, they're saying, you know, you can say it played out like you had a choice, but it could easily play out the other way too. And for some people it did. There were people that got arrested and there were people that got fines or got, things like that bullshit happen. And again, there were people that, and my brother was telling me this, they had it on the news down there, people that went to Florida because they owned homes in Florida. And when they got to the Florida fucking state line, the police were there and said, you can't come in this state. You have to go back to whatever. We don't care that you own property here and pay taxes here and fucking bought a house here. You can't come here. Like, that actually happened.
It's like every other country has to deal with when they have their imaginary lines with other countries.
Right. But I'm saying these are cases that they were negative. Like, I own that property and pay taxes there, and now I can't even go on my own property. Like, that's definitely an infringement of your rights as a fucking property owning, tax paying fucking citizen.
I don't know about any of these one-off anecdotal evidences. I didn't hear about any of these, and I don't give a whole lot of credence to hearsay about the story about the one guy, Bob, that this whatever happened to, because that just seems to be always the way that everybody proves their point. It's kind of the way I usually argue, honestly, that you always try to shut me down with, is that I have this one instance of this wild thing that happened, even though that wasn't the spirit of what we did. So we shouldn't govern it by the one thing. Like, that's the exclusion that we hope doesn't happen, or is few and far between, not the regular what's happening.
Yeah,
but the guy that can't hit the meeting on Tuesday night.
The difference is the authority of the government and the power of the government. So let's say we have a thing in NA where we're trying to have these like the specialty meetings. Like, even though I think the specialty meeting should be done a certain way, I don't have the power to like arrest you or give you a fine or throw you in jail if you don't do it the way that I want you to do it. Whereas the government does have that power. I don't have the power to inflict negative consequences on you as an individual if you don't do what I want you to do. Whereas the government does have that power. And the whole foundation, kind of our country is that, hey, we should be able to like talk honestly if our government's doing shit that we don't like or we think is not kosher or overstepping these certain bounds. Like, when we say you have these, inalienable rights, I mean, my understanding of that concept is they aren't supposed to be infringed upon when it becomes convenient, or not convenience, maybe not the best word, but inalienable is supposed to mean like these are yours, God given, granted no matter what, and
bro, when we wrote those words, we didn't even count women or black people. Like, do you really think they meant inalienable rights? Like, they didn't even mean all people.
Yeah, but to say that our country isn't founded on those principles, I mean, the principles themselves are very good. That's what our country should be built on. And as we grow and change as people, as our understanding changes, we should evolve more to change those things. So that's why we have the amendments that include black people and include women. Because as we go along this path, we go, whoa, wait a minute. We made a serious fucking error here. We need to fix this. So we fix it. And I don't think at this point we don't go, whoa, wait a minute. We gave these people all these rights, but now to protect other people, we need to start taking people's rights away. Like, that's where you get into like communism or socialism or some of these other forms of government where you say, all right, now we have a government that decides for us what's for the good of everyone else. The government now gets all the power to make all the decisions.
I take it you don't believe in gun control then?
It depends on what you mean by gun control. So should we have laws that say you need to have, I think we should have laws that you need to have fucking gun training. Like, that you should have to, almost like driving, like before you can go get a license to have a gun or own guns, that you need to go through a fucking safety and training thing. Like say, just like driving. And that we shouldn't just dole out guns to any fucking buddy who wants to get guns, But I don't think. What's that?
Should you be able to get whatever kind of gun you want?
Me personally? Oh, yeah. Fuck yeah. I don't think you should, who cares? I mean, I guess there's some arguments about it seems like no matter what laws we put in place, people will work around them. But I think the mental health stuff is where the gun laws fall down. Like I have a brother-in-law who's definitely had some mental health issues. It's definitely threatened to kill people. You know what I mean? Like he's definitely had, and he can go out and buy a gun tomorrow if he wants because he doesn't have like the criminal record or anything to stop that. I think that's a definite problem. He's a person who's had violent mental health issues in his past. Whereas me, I can't go out and buy a gun because I have felonies. I mean, maybe I could, I don't know if I still can't. I guess I can't. I don't ever really try, but I have felonies on my record, so I can't buy a gun, even though it was 20 years ago. So I'm not against gun regulation. I just don't know that the laws that we have now are really helpful or useful. But I'm not a dead, like, I don't think like the Second Amendment. I think the Second Amendment needs to be changed. I think that could be altered in some way.
So we do need to take some people's rights back in order to protect everyone.
Well, it depends on what you think. I mean, if you think owning a gun is a right, I mean, I guess it's considered a right in the Constitution. I don't know that I think that's a right. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I agree that that's an inalienable right given by God.
I don't know.
That one to me seems kind of arbitrary, I guess I would say. Like that to me seems like, hey, you can have freedom of speech and freedom of religion and freedom of the press and own some guns. like I feel like that one just kind of got thrown in there, but it seems to me that's in a different spirit than the rest of the, than what we consider our inalienable rights.
I like some of the ideas and ideals that we, wrote our initial documents about. That's great. I think it was a great idea. I think we have not followed them from day one and still continue not to. So I don't ever try to evoke like, we need to live up to these things this country was founded on, because it wasn't really founded on that. Yeah, we wrote it in a document. At the same time, we were killing off everybody who lived here. We wrote it in a document. At the same time, we weren't giving black people and women the exact same rights we're writing about. So really, like, we were never founded on any of that shit. We were founded on like raping and stealing land from people. That's what we were founded on, just like everybody else.
Well, is it bad to shoot for ideals? Like it's
not bad to shoot for them, but it's bad to think that we're owed them or that we actually live by them. I think we should live more in a sense of where we really are.
But I think that's why people don't trust our government or believe our government, is for exactly the hypocrisy that you're talking about. You know what I mean? Like that's the reason our country is so against the government. And so many people, and including me, don't trust the government because you feel like you fucking guys, you talk out of one side of your mouth and then you do something else on the other side. And so, now when you start to tell me this stuff about this virus and what I should do and what I shouldn't do, I don't fucking believe you at all, because you tend to have some ulterior motives and some sneaky bullshit going on in the background. And then, there's one set of rules for you, but a different set for me. And so, you know what I mean? Like, I can't really trust you fuckers to make good decisions. And so that's where I think, at least for me as a person, like that shit starts to fall apart.
Yeah, I don't
like. It would be nice if they did follow those ideals. I would be much happier with a government that did try to shoot for at least some fucking integrity.
I think the government, which is owned by all the money,
well, that's another big problem.
I think their job really is like the buffer between, the extremely rich and the extremely rich just trampling on us and having us, through IV, give them all everything inside of us, basically. I think like the extremely rich would probably have us all hooked up as batteries somewhere if there was no government in place to kind of be the buffer of like, hey, yeah, we get kickbacks from these extremely rich people, but in return, we also like keep y'all alive and not as batteries. That's kind of how I look at it. I don't know. I don't.
Yeah, but let's take like an extremely rich, like either Walmart or Amazon. I mean, and this I think is where we start to fall down as a people. Like we expect the government to make sure they're doing what they should be doing instead of us as citizens going, you know what? Walmart is fucked up. And I'm not going to shop there because of the shit that they do and the way that they treat people and the way that they don't fuck them. I'll go to fucking Acme, you know. But instead, we sort of fall back on this. Well, they're regulated. The government's taking care of it. They'll make sure their people are getting what they're supposed to and the workers are safe and all that stuff. So I can just ignore all that shit and continue to shop there and act like I'm guilt-free or whatever.
But you know, all the people that continue to shop at Walmart are the people that don't trust the government.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's my kind of thing, is that I think people don't trust the government because they've been afforded the ability to not trust the government, right? They've been set up with such wonderful lives by our country that they have the ability and the time to question the government. Like, it's that Maslow's hierarchy of needs all over again. Like, they've had so many of their needs met that they can now distrust their government and spout about the flat earth and the Illuminati and coronavirus is really mind control and all this shit. Like, this is the people that don't trust the government. They've been so entitled to a great life that they have the ability to do that. Like, okay, that's cool, but I don't know that any of that's real.
Well, I think there's levels. I mean, would you consider yourself someone who trusts the government? Like,
trust them how? Like, trust them to do what's great for me personally? No, absolutely not. I trust them to make decisions based on what gets them reelected, which is unfortunate.
right. Yeah. And so I would agree with that. Like, they're not. So the whole idea is that they're supposed to be representatives of their communities and the people and, you know, trying to protect and serve, you know, their constituents. And I don't think they do that very well.
Well,
I don't think
we've outgrown our government and we need to redo the whole thing, and nobody's ready to do that because it's laid out in the Constitution and we can't change a fucking thing about that document 300 years later.
Oh, and see, I tend to look at, like, I think it should. I mean, that's why we have amendments. Like, that's the whole idea of being able to amend the Constitution, is so we can make changes to the fucking things that have changed and don't work. And it definitely is outdated, and it's definitely, you know, there's shit in there that doesn't address current life stuff, you know. Like, it definitely needs to be. It's like laws. Like, they make all these laws and put them on the books, and then they never go back and change laws that fucking don't even matter anymore. They just leave them and keep, like, now we have, you know, the one they always talk about is like laws about horses being tied up to fucking posts at the local store, and like, none of that shit. No, it's not even relevant to what we're doing nowadays. And
fuck the amendment.
To have laws about certain stuff, and then they don't exist. You know, you find out, oh, there aren't really any laws about fucking interstate commerce over the internet. So, you know, like, we just don't have laws to protect your rights about that shit. Like, what the fuck do you mean? How do we not work faster?
I don't think we should change the amendments. I think we should rewrite the whole shit. I think it's busted. It's messed up.
Yeah.
We live in a world today, we could just do government differently, and we could take some of the crap out of it. Like, don't pay these people money. Don't make them so important and influential. Pay everybody in Congress a teacher's salary, and don't give them the vote. All they do is draft ideas into vote, and then we can have a direct democracy and all vote on it from an app on our phone.
Right.
I don't fucking need them Senate and House anymore. That's a fucking crock of shit.
Well, not only that, but, you know, like I say, in the beginning, like, all these things like taxes and fucking the ability of, you know, Congress to get these exorbitant paychecks and take all this outside influence money, like, that shit's all stuff that they have slowly let seep into the system over time. like it's, you know, it's, they've made changes to that shit where it suits fucking them. But yeah, I don't know. I guess in a way we do it to ourselves because we reelect the same people to go back every fucking year.
Well, that's because the way government's set up, it doesn't work for our lifestyle anymore. We vote on a popularity. Have I heard that name before? Oh, that's the name I need to vote for.
Yeah.
I've heard it before.
Or a party. Like, I have to vote for this party because they, like, I like 3 of the things that they do. I don't like the other 7, but I like 3, so I gotta vote. You know, yeah.
It's just, none of it makes any sense at this point in time in 2020.
No.
But
yeah, it's pretty crazy.
We'd rather shout at each other from across the aisle than, you know, come up with a whole new system that actually works.
Yeah, but that's back to, you know, all this. Like, that's why people were like, I don't know what to believe. You know, should I believe Do I want to believe the fucking Governor Hogan, or do I want to believe Elon Musk? Fucking who's a smart, rich billionaire. And I don't know. Some people feel one
He's
way,
got a
and some
bias.
people feel different. What's that?
He's got a bias. He wants to open his fucking company up. That's just obvious. Don't take his word for it.
Well, he sells cars. I don't know that he's closed down. He started making ventilators.
They were closed.
Yeah.
That was the big controversy, was that he opened up against California's orders. That's why
I didn't hear that
I'll never
part.
trust anybody that's making money off of something when they
Right.
spout their platform. Fuck that. They're obviously lying. No, I don't know. I look at the president. He's all like, open back up. We're great. And his own doctor, his own specialist is like, yeah, this is coming back. It's inevitable. And I'm like, well, That's okay. There's the obvious truth right there. Your own doctor doesn't even agree with you.
Well, and I don't know how true it is, but there's a whole bunch of shit about that guy, about how fucking
he disagreed with Trump.
What's that?
He disagreed with Trump.
So they came up with a fucking, and I don't trust Trump at all. He's an idiot.
That night, Fox News, that Fauci said something contrary to what Trump wanted the world to hear, that night Fox News was on there talking about, look at this. 3 months ago, we got tape of Fauci giving credit to China. I'm like, holy shit. Are you serious? You're like slandering the guy the night of it.
Well, and I already figured out, like, they're already setting up to like get the, whatever you want to call it, the majority Fox people to fucking start hating Fauci. Like, they've been setting that up over time with these little bits of information here and there, little bits of, stuff here. They're trying to set people up to get fucking fire Fauci.
I just find it incredible. Yeah, I find it incredible how half the news it is. It's like, it's very David Copperfield, right? It's like, hey, yeah, we've got 87,000 coronavirus deaths, but we'll talk China and economy or something. Like, it's always, look at the shit that's going on over here. It's never like, look what's right in front of you also, right? There's okay, maybe China did do some fucked up stuff with this. I'm not saying they didn't, but let's not totally focus on that. Let's also focus on the fact that people are dying and we need to fix it. And it's like the sleight of hand.
And so I guess, I would consider, and this is where I find myself on most of things, it's like I end up in the middle, like even with the coronavirus stuff. Like, I think, yes, we should be wearing masks. That's not a huge deal. It's not overly, I mean, people act like fucking babies about it. Oh, my glasses get fogged up. Like, come on, fucking really? Like, risk reward there is, let's just wear some masks for a couple months. It really isn't that big a deal. It's a minor inconvenience that, is it like, that's one I have a hard time arguing. Like, does that really infringe upon my fucking rights that I have to wear a mask? No, I'll wear a mask. I really don't have a huge deal. It's inconvenient, but whatever. Should we be practicing social distancing? Yeah, that's not a, again, not a huge deal. I shouldn't be having big fucking cookouts at my house. I shouldn't be, doing certain things. I should be trying to really limit my exposure to other people and being like, there are some really safe, what I would consider, like, seems to be pretty logical, steps we can take to minimize, to be safe, but to like close down businesses and tell people you got to stay at home and shut down all kinds of stuff like that seems extreme. And so I think, we can find like a middle ground that's like, we need to be really being safe. People need to be washing their fucking hands. You need to be not spreading germs. You need to be conscious about what you're doing when you're out in public. Like, I mean, all this has definitely made me more aware of that stuff when I'm out in public. What am I touching? What am I fucking putting my hands on? What am I, and that stuff's great. Like, that's really healthy and safe. And those are actually things we can probably take into the future that will make things better.
So this, I guess, from the social worker standpoint, comes back to a lot of vulnerable population stuff. Okay, I live with some vulnerable populations, and to me that matters, and I'm going to be safe about it, right? What about the people who live with vulnerable populations that don't give a fuck? What about the guy who works at a nursing home but goes out to restaurants and bars all week because that's his lifestyle, and he doesn't give a fuck about protecting the nursing homes, people, and carries it in there. Like, what about the people who have their aging parents or grandparents at home, or the teenagers who go to school and then come home and bring it home and their aging grandparents there, and they just don't give a shit because they're a teenager and they can't think that far ahead about that kind of stuff yet. Like, without the government restrictions, all these people are out spreading it to people who don't get the option to choose to be safe. Like, yes, we give you the right to go out and go to restaurants and businesses, but we've now also given these other people the right who aren't going to be as careful about it. And we've taken the right to live away from these vulnerable people that don't get the option.
Yeah. I mean, well, and again, I guess you have to start figuring out what you're safe with, or what your, comfort level is. I mean, because I would kind of go the other way and think, well, my dad, what I mean? My dad's 67 years old. He's pissed off that he can't do any of these things that he wants to do. You know what I mean? Like, he's not concerned about it. And now he's like, well, fuck, I am their high risk, what they call high risk. And now now I can't do anything. I'm in essence stuck by myself on my boat, and I'm not even supposed to go around my family, my friends, anyone I'm supposed to be around. And he lives alone. So technically he's not supposed to be doing anything but fucking sitting at home on his boat by himself. Like, and so he is a person who's the other side of that. It's like, yeah, I'm high risk, but this is bullshit, and I don't want to live this way, and I don't think this is fair to me as a person.
I don't think he's the other side of that, though. I'm talking about people who don't have the decision because other people around them are given their right back, and so their decision is made for them. They're almost under attack because they don't have the ability to remove themselves from the place.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying is his rights are taken away as a high risk person. Like,
he's got to give up his
right to protect.
He's not giving up a right to life.
He's not. There's quality of life, which is
he's sitting home for 2 months instead of being dead forever. I don't consider those equal.
Yeah, but no one's stopping a high risk person from staying home.
Did you not hear the situations I was giving you was people in nursing homes who can't go anywhere else? If the people who come in to tend to them or to clean are going out to restaurants and bars all week and then bringing it in there, those people in the nursing home can't get away from that. The aging grandparent that lives with a teenage or a middle school kid can't get away from that. They don't have those options. So by opening up everything else for people to have their rights, you're putting these people under the gun where they can't get away from it. They don't have the option. It's not a choice anymore.
So for me as an individual, now I am second-hand responsible for someone else's bad decision making. Like, I am not doing any of those things. Yeah, like, so because I decide I want to go out and fucking sign up for Little League, or let's say they open Little League next week, and I say, all right, we're playing Little League because we like to we need sports, and my son needs to get out and whatever. So I make that decision. But then one of the other kids that's on the team, their parent is a fucking nurse or whatever at a senior place, and I might possibly infect them, who then they are going to make a bad decision, not be careful, and go into a senior home and infect senior people. Like, I'm somehow responsible for their bad decision making. Like,
as school bad decision making?
If I am a person that is around people that are high risk, I should take like some personal responsibility for that decision making. If I am a person that is going to be potentially infecting other people, then I should be taking the precautions and things that I need to protect those vulnerable people.
If there's one thing I trust less than the government, it's trusting that other people are not going to be self-centered. There's no fucking way everybody's self-centered. They're going to go make the decision we're going to party at the bar on Friday night. Fuck them old people that I work with.
Right. But again, then that means I am supposed to take some sort of responsibility as a whole for those people that'll make bad decisions.
I think so. I would gladly stay home for 2 months over more people dying for permanent. Like 2, 3, 4 months is not that big a deal in a portion of my life, as opposed to ending it altogether. That's what I guess I'm getting at. Like, if we keep these people, and you're saying irresponsible people, but if they open up all these businesses, they also have to open up school, because that's where people's daycare is mostly. And so school is not an irresponsible decision. It's like where you send your kid to be responsible.
Yeah,
And
that is
yet,
one thing I did hear. That's one of the worst places for spreading shit is school. Like that's
yeah,
with flu. They said that's how the flu gets around like it does is through schools and shit. That was one thing when I heard, because at first I'm like, why did they close schools? You know, and then I heard them talking about how like the fucking kid, and it made sense when I heard it. It's like kids are totally not safe. You know,
germ
they
factories.
don't give a shit. They don't wash their hands, and they don't fucking they'll pick their nose and fucking rub the desk, and you know, like
Yep.
they just don't even. And you can't expect, you know, what's a 7 or 8 year old, like they got no fucking concept of germs or viruses or any of that shit. Like they don't know.
Yeah, and that's definitely, school is breeding grounds for every sickness.
Yeah.
And so if schools aren't open, businesses can't be open, because people depend on schools to watch their kids for them during the day. And if you do open schools, now you're talking about having people, the grandparents that are forced to be at home, getting, dying because their kids went to school or their grandkids went to school or whatever. And it's like, I don't know. I don't feel bad for somebody who, can't do everything they want for a couple of months versus keeping some people alive. I just don't feel bad about it. I'm not like going to sit here and act like I do. Sorry. I don't
Yeah.
like, fuck it. Yeah. You can't eat at a restaurant right now. Sorry. Like, darn, it's not that big a deal, I don't think.
Yeah. And I don't know that I would, like, if this stays or goes, like me personally, I don't think I would care. Like I would keep doing whatever they tell me to do because I'm not overly sweating it. I just think it's a little bit like now at this point to me, it feels like we're going extreme. It feels like it's a little overkill.
I'm wondering what that is. Did we talk about that last week about people not wanting to sit still with themselves? Is that like a thing, or did we bring that up last week?
Oh, even being here, I don't sit still. Like I just, I think we've talked about that. No, I don't think we talked about it last week. But I'm
Oh, okay.
definitely, I don't sit around, which is
I
another whole thing. Like that was something I thought about talking about, although it's gonna probably make me feel bad or look bad. Is how like this whole not having school and not having that stuff for the kids. Like I really need to in ways get really more engaged with the kids, like it's easy, they will do for themselves, like they're sort of independent at their ages, but now I'm like, well, yeah, but they're making terrible fucking decisions for themselves, and because it's easy or convenient or I'm just either out of touch or lazy, I just let them, like Billy fucking plays video games 12 hours a day and was staying up half the night and not sleeping right and sleeping half the day and eating fucking junk food because he's not up when we eat meals, and just
Mhm.
and it's just like, this will go away, this will go away. Now it's like, fuck, like, I don't say this too loud, but like we were at the beach and he's fucking put on a bunch of weight, like because he's not being active and he's not really doing much, and I'm not dragging him out there, forcing him to do stuff, and it was like, fuck, just made me feel really like, damn, I'm really falling down on this. Like I need to get with him and get engaged with him to do more, and then trying to navigate that in a way that's not like, I also don't want to like start insulting him and saying, "Oh, you're fucking fat and you're gaining all this weight." And like I don't want to do that. I don't want to like hurt him or hurt his feelings or not feelings, but what's that? Like as self-esteem. Like I don't want to start like, oh, you got to fucking be on a, and all that weird shit. You got to be on a diet. You got to do this and that. It's like, nope. So now, like today, Jen and I were talking like, all right, we're going to really make an effort to just engage him in more physical activity. Like really making an effort to like, all right, what kind of food do we have here in the house? Like we really got to make a better effort to not have him fucking cookies and snacks and junk food, because now that he's self-regulating at 11 years old, he's doing a terrible job. And so if he's going to make some of these because the truth is, he will stay up later than me, and I can try to yell at him to go to bed at 11 o'clock, but I can't stay up past 11 o'clock. Like, I'm going to fucking bed. I'm passing out, going to sleep. And I can go up and ask him. He'll say, okay. So we did do some things. We started limiting the internet. Like, I went in and figured out how to set like limits on the internet and do some stuff like that. But it's like, fuck, it's hard to try to, because I'm still working full time. I'm still getting up in the morning and got my full-time job and still got to figure that shit out. Jen's not here, so I can say this. I want to get mad at her and be like, well, you're the fucking one that's here with him all day. Why are you just letting him sit in his room all day and play video games? Like, what the fuck? But then the flip side of that is when I come home from work, I don't want to deal with it either. You know what I mean? I want to come home and be like, I fucking worked all day and I just want to chill out and get some dinner. And then I'm trying to finish this bathroom. So I want to work on that and the kids will be fine. And,
Right.
So that's been a really humbling, eye-opening thing of like, without school or without that other regulatory thing in my kid's life, like, fuck, I'm really and you see these people doing great and loving homeschool and all that shit. Like,
I don't know. I try to come up with theories all the time for everything. I guess that's what I do. I try to understand behavior. I try to understand people and what they're thinking and what's going on. And so people didn't protest the first 3-4 weeks of this. Like, nobody gave a fuck. Nobody was raising a big stink about it. Very few people, very few people talked about it, but it wasn't like it is. It wasn't a big deal. And so my theory is that generally we stay busy enough in our life that we don't ever have to actually look at ourselves. Like, we're rushing from one thing to the next. It's just simple to stay busy and in our unconscious life. And kind of one of the principles of therapy is in meditation, you slow down, you start to become conscious of these things that are in your unconscious, and you start to notice what's going on, and then you got to deal with it. And so after this 3 or 4 weeks of sitting still at home in quarantine, that started to come up for people. And so somewhere in weeks like 5 through 8, that came up for a whole lot of people. And now like half of our society is ready to picket and protest and fuck the rules. I don't care. I'm going to do what I want, because that's better than having to deal with whatever was starting to come up. And the only reason like I kind of got keyed into this was because all of a sudden I wanted to smoke a Black and Mild really, really bad, like really bad. And I was like, what the fuck? Why do I? And like, I almost bought one and I was going to do it. And then I didn't. And then I got angry about it. And I had this angry period for like a week, and it was hard to deal with and it hurt. And I ended up sitting with it and kind of got to the bottom of some of it. But it kind of made me realize that maybe this is what's happening for everybody. And just a large portion of our population no longer wants to address themselves. And so now they're going to force governments to open back up or protest or do whatever it takes, because they got to get back to avoiding themselves. And I don't know if that's a real thing. It's completely just made up theory on my end, but it sounded like it could be something. I don't know. I was curious.
Well, I heard a different take on the same subject. Maybe they didn't really get into the motivations why, but they described it as that moral dilemma that you get in. I'm sure you probably heard it through the different psychology stuff or whatever that you've done. It's like there's a train coming down a track, and if the train keeps going, it's going to kill 5 people. But if you pull the lever, it's going to kill 1 person. And if you're the person there, what's the right decision? That kind of thing.
That's philosophy.
Yeah, philosophy. So that this is a similar case to that. Like, I don't see it. And again, for me, making these limits, which is why, so I've avoided making the argument that these business owners are losing their business and losing their lives. And I don't make that argument because it's not fucking me. Like, that's not my argument to make. But now I'm going to go there for a minute and say, let's take someone like, we have the little local fucking lady that runs the pet grooming place that we take our dogs. Like, she has a little business there in Elkton, real nice lady. She's been in business I think 3 or 4 years now, and that's where we were taking the dogs. Well, now all of a sudden, out of nowhere, she was forced to shut her business down and can't make any money. And so that definitely has a different negative impact on her life than, let's say, mine or yours, you know. So again, I don't necessarily understand what she's going through, but she has been negatively impacted by this in a very real way. You know what I mean? Now all of a sudden, you know, she's got choices to make on, like, how is she going to pay her bills? How is she going to pay her family? She had some employees. How is she paying her employees? You know, those people that she had working for her. Obviously, it's an inconvenience for me because I got to drag the dog out in the yard and fucking wash the dog. But like that lady probably has a much different argument for opening up than somebody like me would have, or, you know, in essence, somebody like you, because the impacts on her are different. And so it becomes that moral choice of, like, do I pull the lever and kill one person, or do I do nothing, put my hands up and say, hey, you know, whatever happens is going to happen, and kill 5 people?
Yeah, and it is an interesting argument, right? Because in one case, you're killing less people by far, but on the other side of that, you are choosing to kill that person. Like, you are now responsible for their death, whereas before you had no responsibility for it.
Right.
And so it's really interesting. And I don't know. You're right. That is a view I don't have, right? I'm not a small business owner. I don't have that particular ability to say how that affects people in that arena. But I do find it interesting that we instantly say it impacts them negatively. Like, especially from a belief system such as mine, which is more of the yin and the yang, where there is no negative or positive. It all is just things, right? Like, we take out of it what we want. Like, maybe this lady is as happy as I am to get out of the rat race and the busyness for, you know, a couple of months. Maybe it's a nice relaxing time for her to reevaluate her life and explore what she really wants to do with it. Like, who the fuck knows? We instantly say everything's negative, but what if everything does happen for a reason? Then maybe we're just supposed to have things happen for reasons. Like, it doesn't have to be negative or positive, and that could go either way. If we did nothing about any of this coronavirus, I guess that happened for a reason, but we did. So I guess that happened for a reason. Like, I'm not here to say what's negative or positive about it.
Yeah, and I guess that's a way I tend to look at this too, is like, I don't think anyone at this point, whatever decisions and shutting down and all, like, I don't think any of it's like, oh, this was wrong or any of that. Like, no, we did this and that was probably the best decision to make at the time. And, you know, we really were, like, I would say better safe than sorry. You know what I mean? Like, better err on the side of, like, fuck, we don't know what this is, and we don't want hundreds of thousands of people dying, and we don't want, you know, millions of people getting sick. Like, we really need to do something about it. So I don't necessarily think that it was wrong shutting down. I just don't know. Like, say, where do you draw that line of, like, how many lives are worth normalcy, I guess you would say, versus not, you know? And for some people, that number is 10 lives or 1 life. You know what I mean? Like, if we can prevent 1 life, then we should be safe. And other people, that number's higher. You know, other people, that might be a percentage. And I don't know that there's a right number. I guess that depends on your own morality or your own sense of responsibility, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting. I read a similar thing to that thought experiment the other day, actually, on Twitter, and it was kind of hilarious. It was about, you know, the pull and the lever, but instead of the 5 people and the 1 people getting killed by the train, it was, if you pull the lever, you return the shopping cart to its little tent area in the parking lot. And if you don't pull the lever, you don't return it. You just let it, you know, in the parking lot in the wild. And it seemed like such an obvious decision to me. Well, you pull the fucking lever and you return the shopping cart, right? Like, it's just what you do. But the whole point they were making about it was that that's the 2 different kinds of people that really exist a lot of times. And that's the decision. Like, if you don't return the shopping cart, nobody's going to lock you up, right? Nobody's going to kill you. There's no harm that's going to come to you if you don't return it. And yet, if you do return it, you're helping out, and it's useful for the people who, collect them. It's useful for not being in the way of other people who come after you who need to park in the parking spots. And so there's no definitive punishment for not doing it. And so they said that the shopping cart return is like the ultimate guide to people who are willing to do anything for other people when nobody's looking.
I saw something about that. Yeah, I remember reading something about that. The shopping
I
cart
just
thing.
thought that was interesting, and I'm like, it's kind of got a point. There's no real downside to you if you don't choose to return it, right? It's really all about doing it because it's the right thing for the next guy.
So what I find fascinating about that, because I'm just going to equate it back to myself, is that I would say probably 9 times out of 10, I return the shopping cart, but sometimes I don't.
Really?
It depends on the, yep. Almost every time I take it back, but not always. And I wish I could say that it was always the same reason not. I'll give you what makes me feel better about myself and tell you, like, if it's pouring down rain, I'll fucking leave the shopping cart. I never leave it just blank in the middle of the park. Well, that's not true. I probably have. But I would usually like push it up over the curb or whatever. But there have been times where, but most of the time I do. Most of the time I take it back.
I don't think I have ever not returned it. I just assumed it was the right thing to do, and you do it. I don't know.
No, I can honestly. I mean, like say, if 9 times out of 10, I'm going to take it back. But occasionally there'll be that one time where it's like, I would have to. I never thought that much about it, other than when I read that thing the other day. I thought, well, I'm going to take the shopping cart person back, but not always. There have definitely and the reason is when I don't take it back, there is a guilt thing that comes in. There's a sense of irresponsibility or guilt that comes with that, But it hasn't stopped me from not doing it. I mean,
right.
Again, I'd like to say when it's pouring down rain or when something crazy's happening or, but I don't know if that's true or not. That just makes me feel good about myself.
So I'm curious, are we even going to start the podcast today, or are we just fucking, I don't know what we're doing.
Well, can I take a pee now? I got to pee all of a sudden too.
Yeah, sure.
Hold on, I'll be right back. There we go. Set all my headphones. Yeah, I don't know. That shopping cart thing could be fun to talk about because that's interesting. Now I'm like, that's interesting. Because then I thought about masks. So, like, I started wearing a mask before they made it the law that you had to do it. Like Sophie started making masks and we started wearing them when we were out. But now I'm like, if they stopped making it mandatory, would I still wear one now? And my inclination is to say no. Which is interesting because then I think, well, how fucking lazy is that? Like, so it falls into the shopping cart thing. Like, is that a shopping cart thing where, like, look, it's a fucking minor inconvenience to wear a mask, but yet as soon as I feel not a legal or legal, but as soon as the government tells me it's morally okay not to, I'll stop. like I need them to decide my moral value.
That's interesting, especially after the entire hour we've spent talking about how the government shouldn't be our moral decision maker.
Right.
Okay, so let's start. We got a couple of comments about last week's stuff, and then we'll kind of delve into the shopping cart, which was taking me to another question that I'll put on to you while we're talking about that.
Okay. Should we record again? Have we needed to do that? The recording with the...
we didn't do it last week. Probably never going to do anything with it, so fuck it. This seems to be working pretty well, I think. Oh shit, I don't have a long statement. What can I say today? Oh, there we go. Perfect. Hey, welcome back to Recovery Sort of. I'm Jason. I'm a guy who's long-winded.
I'm Billy. I'm a person in long-term recovery.
There's probably nothing more accurate than me being long-winded, for sure. No, honestly, I'm still feeling the repercussions. I met a new person recently, and they texted me a couple times, and I texted them back, and then they text me and they asked me for any suggestions yesterday, and I responded with 6 fucking long ass book text messages, and they never replied, and my feelings are hurt, and I'm like, oh my god, I scared them off, and I'm trying to be okay with this is just who I am, but it still sucks. And
it's funny. I've had a similar experience recently in my life. I've realized I fucking talk a lot, and if I don't watch myself, I will ramble on and think that I'm the most interesting person.
I wanna so bad text this person and be like, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to scare you, but I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. It is what it is. So last week we talked about, the idea of what's our responsibility with opening home groups back up, and I really thought with Maryland opening back up, there would be a little more rush to do this, but it seems like all the people who were already ready to meet in person are kind of already doing that and have been all along in somewhat small, sensible ways usually, right? Even when I say my home group that is meeting at the park is probably not 10 or less people, I don't think they're down there making out, having an orgy, right? I do think it's still a pretty limited number of people, and they're spread out pretty well. I'm guessing they're wearing masks. I don't know, but I don't think it's completely irresponsible is what I'm getting at. So I think people who are meeting in person have been for quite some time, and they're doing it mostly cautiously, I guess.
Just a question for you real quick, and you may know the dynamic of your home group a little better. I know it's, people from a recovery house. Does it seem like a lot of the members of that home group are all in the same house?
No,
you have 6 or 7 guys in the same house that are in that home group, I guess.
It's 3 different houses, basically. And so I think one has 5 people, the other one has 6, and the other one has 4 or something like that. So now basically, instead of being separate in their houses, they're all coming together and being separate at the park together.
Well, and I wonder, I was curious how much, if I live in a house with 5 other guys and I'm seeing them all the time, obviously, my social distancing with them is going to be more like a family versus social distancing from outside a family. So your home group dynamic would be probably different than mine, who were definitely people that are in all different households.
Right. So this is 3 different households, but I do think the interesting aspect would be that almost everybody in these houses is still going to work. And so now you've taken the 5 people who are going to work at this house who are all exposed to different people. And then now you're putting them around the 4 people who are all going to work in that house. And that's kind of what they wanted to avoid with, spreading this thing. That's a lot of different contact.
Yeah.
But so I don't think people ran out to open up meetings right this second. I did attend our area service, which happened to be this past Thursday. And they had a slight conversation about it. It wasn't very thorough, I don't think. And I don't think everybody was happy about how quickly it went, but it, it kind of addressed some stances of area, which gets into some other questions I might actually ask you at some point too, because I'm curious. I think I know, but I want to know better. But anyway, so we did that podcast and talked about the face-to-face. And basically I posed it as a question to people on social media. Would you switch home groups if your home group did something different than you were ready for? Whether that's, if you're ready to go back out, would you find a home group that's meeting in person? And if you're not ready to go back out, would you switch? And so just some different responses. Brittany said that she already has a second home group that she's picked up, which is a home group that never, ever met face-to-face and completely just came about because of this virtual thing. She feels like she's not ready. And so even if her regular home group that she used to attend in person did go back to in person, she's kind of got a backup already. And I think that's a sentiment that's kind of echoed throughout this, is that people say, if you're not ready, why do you need to switch home groups? Why not just find another meeting for the moment?
Yeah, I thought about that too. I thought, well, do you really need to switch? I mean, obviously we hope this is, or I don't know, hope. Some people feel like this is going to be temporary. So, Yeah,
it's interesting. I mean, I do think it's temporary, but I mean, what is it? It's May, so June, July, August, September. I got 4 months till my anniversary. Like, I do want to celebrate somewhere. So I don't know I don't know what state we'll be in by then. I guess it's more playing it by ear.
Yeah, and I've actually thought about that, because this year is my 20-year anniversary. Like, that's a big deal.
Woohoo!
And I got to say, I was if that was going to be virtual, I don't know that I even would have celebrated. I would have probably not.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would do it virtually. I think it's cool. People get to attend that don't normally get to attend, but yeah, I get it. So I shared a meeting yesterday morning, at 10 a.m. and it was nice. It's hard to share virtually with no feedback from your audience whatsoever, but it was a good meeting. Like, I got a lot of feedback after my share from people sharing back, and it was really good information, and I was like enjoying it. I will say I still always believe anybody that gets up on like Saturday mornings for a 10 a.m. meeting is generally serious about their recovery. And so I like that. But the guy who asked me to do the meeting messaged me afterwards and thanked me. And that was the first time, I think, that I have really felt sad that I couldn't be around somebody and wished I could have. And I was like, damn, I really would have liked to have been in his presence and given him a hug today. And so I thought that was kind of an interesting. I haven't felt that up until then.
Yeah, I've met with some people and I've wanted to hug. Like, that's weird. I did accidentally. I shook a guy's hand just the other day. Like, it was through a work thing, and someone introduced me, said, "Hey, Billy, this is so and so," and I just said, "Oh, hey, nice to meet you." And I reached out, and he shook my hand too. And then he goes, "We're not supposed to do that, right?"
Right.
And it was not like, had I thought about it for a minute, I would not have done it. And then I felt bad, not even as much for myself, but for him. Like, how weird of a situation did I just put him in? And it was just weird that it was just so instinctual, just react.
Now, I've done that twice since this whole thing started. Once with a neighbor, and I felt the same way afterwards. I was like, did I just fucking do that? Mr. T-Bear says his home group never closed down. 6 meetings a day, 365 days a year. The leader enforced social distancing, and they stayed open because the liquor store 2 doors down was deemed essential, and so their group conscience said they needed to be open too.
Wow.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. And I talked to him a little bit. I said a lot of churches were closed, and he was saying that they pay to rent a space in like a strip mall. And so they just stayed open, and I guess nobody's ever told them they couldn't.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Anna said that she does whatever it takes to protect her parents and other high-risk loved ones. She feels like she was like super irresponsible during her using time and put them at risk, whether that was, at a higher risk of actual physical damage or just the fact of the emotional risks and, the way she caused their health damage at that point, that she will do everything possible to make sure that doesn't happen today. I couldn't completely understand what Ramsey was telling me. He said, well, if it's a tradition or step-based group, tradition 1 is worth a look. Then step 4, because it's impossible to properly do a step 8 amends if you're too dead to do it or the person you've harmed is dead. I guess I assumed he was getting at the fact that we shouldn't be meeting yet and that we would kill people.
I'm not sure.
I was like,
I don't know about that either.
And look, here's the worst part. Like, I've done work on all these steps, traditions, and all this, but when somebody's like, oh, tradition 1's worth a look, I'm like, fuck, what's tradition 1 again?
I've heard them read 1,000+ times in my life, and I still have to go back. Well, 7. Let me think. I got to start running through the order.
Right. Yeah. So I guess he was saying we weren't ready to do that. John said his home group said they sent a text message that they were meeting in the parking lot, masks and social distancing, but he took a pass and he needs to practice in all his affairs. If the professionals say it's not safe, then it's not safe. And so that was what we got on Twitter. Over on Facebook, we had Caroline said she definitely would not change her home group in either scenario. She would just do what was comfortable until things synced up again. So if her home group opened and she was not ready, she would just not go until she was ready to go. And if they chose not to open and she was ready, she would attend other meetings. And then, when her home group opened back up, she'd be there. And so that was interesting. So I kind of, I asked her, I'm like, well, would you hit another meeting regularly? And she said not particularly. Like, it would probably happen by accident just because she hits pretty much some of the same meetings, but she wouldn't really go out of her way to make another group or home group for now. Robin said the same thing. She would not change home groups, but if restaurants open, she's not going there or the movies or her home group. Social distancing and masks help, but the only sure way to stay safe is quarantining. And then she said something about when there's a vaccine, she'll be there. I'm not, see, that's a weird thing too. Like, I'm not, I guess, we had a long conversation before we actually started recording the podcast portion of this. And I don't know what the solution is for me because I don't want a vaccine for this either. Like, not for me. I don't know if everybody else wants that, that's fine, whatever. But I don't want to take a vaccine for this. And I also don't want herd immunity. So I don't know what the fuck I think the answer is. Like, I obviously just want to stay home forever.
I didn't think much about this when we were talking about it earlier, but it's different, even like with my wife and I, like she has a different take on most of this than me. And she said, similar to Caroline, like I shared earlier with Jason, we went down to the beach this weekend and, we thought, well, some restaurants might start opening up. And I was like, yeah, we should go to a restaurant. They're going to be doing the social distancing and keeping tables separated. And she said, oh, I'm not going to a restaurant. I'm not, she was totally not comfortable with doing that. So, I don't know. I guess there's so many different versions of what is safe and what people are comfortable with. But I've always been a risk taker in my life anyway, like that's my mentality and most things.
We went down to my mother's last week and my interpretation of that was, hey, we're going to go down here. It's a beautiful day outside. We're going to cook out. We're all just going to stay outside and hang out. And I get it. You're still close outside, but I do think it's a little different. You don't have the stagnant air, the stagnant stuff you're breathing out, sitting in the same room. Like, I thought it was a little safer. And of course, I should know better. But within 45 minutes of being there, my wife and the baby have disappeared inside. And then 3 kids disappeared inside. It's like, all of a sudden, I'm the only one outside playing. I'm like, well, all right, I guess we're not following the fucking rules. We're going to sit inside. Like, So, yeah, my idea is different of what I think is okay, too. I just at times lose influence over being able to guide that.
Yeah. And luckily, I'll say, like, I am not so married to my ideas that I'll fight with my wife about it. Like, I just said, oh, okay, then we won't do a restaurant. We'll just get carry out, like, because I don't know. It's all so weird and there's so many variables and it is scary to think. Like, I've heard all the horror stories the other way of healthy people getting sick and all that, where it's like, it doesn't hurt to be a little bit mindful and a little bit careful, and there's no real downside to being cautious.
Well, like we were driving yesterday and we were trying to figure out where we wanted to eat. And it's tough in my family. The kids always have a place they want to go, but between my wife and I, we don't really like, neither of us give a fuck usually. It's like, I don't know what the fuck I got a taste for. I have no idea. Too many options.
Yeah.
And so we were trying to pick, and we ended up picking based on what would be best to eat in the car, because obviously we're not going in. Like, I don't like eating a lot of food in the car. Like we talked about Waffle House. I love Waffle House, but I don't want to eat that shit in the car. I want to eat it at a table, right? And where else? There was somewhere else we were like, yeah, that sounds great, but I don't want to eat it in the car. Like, it's just not car food. And so we ended up going to Chick-fil-A because it was good car food. And
That's funny. I'm the same with I won't eat French fries in the car. Like, I only eat French fries if we sit in the restaurant, because I feel like in the car they always get cold, and I like ketchup. And then when we were at the beach, we had the same issue with breakfast. Like, I love to go to the beach. You go to one of them breakfast places, you get a big breakfast of eggs and bacon and sausage and all that stuff. And Jen's like, I don't want to get carry out breakfast. By the time you get it and bring it back, the eggs are cold and shit's soggy and the toast is no good. Like, I was like, yeah, I guess that's true. So we had to skip, having a good breakfast.
Yeah, no, we did Cracker Barrel one night, like probably 3 weeks ago or something, and it was kind of like, some people don't mind reheating their shit. I'm not for the reheating.
Yeah, I'm not a reheater either.
Fuck that. Back to the Facebook. Barry said, he quoted Cat Stevens and talked about not time to make a change and stuff, which was pretty interesting. I was trying to keep up with the lyrics. He was pretty good with it. Brian said, why would anybody not be ready? Everybody values the importance of live face-to-face meetings. I was like, oh shit, here we go. We're going to have an argument. But it ended up not being an argument. I just said, I'm personally not ready to go back. I said, I don't know of a truly safe way to do them, and I live with a vulnerable population. And he said, well, when you're ready, we'll be here. We love and need you. And I was like, oh, well, that worked out nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just saw it going a different way. Elizabeth was much in line with, same thing. Just she's going to other countries. She's digging the online thing. She's not ready for face-to-face either. But yeah, it didn't seem like anybody else was really keen to change their home group. So again, Caroline talked about, interested to see what would go on at the area, which we were both at. And then Dawn commented, but I don't think she was talking about it's up to the individual group consciences about what to do for the meetings. And I think maybe she read into the comment about area as being that area was going to come up with the solution for everybody. And I just clarified, I was like, this was just a place to gather ideas. Like, if people had good ideas about how to do this safely, let's put them out there so other groups can hear them too, right? Like, I don't know how to do this right.
Yeah, and that's, my home group is the same. We've been talking actually this week about that. We pretty much, I think the group conscience is we're going to take the meeting off the Zoom list. We're not going to do the Zoom meeting. We're going to start meeting up again in person. And how do we do that in a responsible way? Are we going to wipe down the facility when we leave? We got somebody's bringing Clorox wipes so we can wipe everything down. Do we make coffee? All those things. And like say, you just try to hopefully make a responsible decision. And now, in our case, it's like, if you make coffee, if someone's not comfortable drinking it, they don't have to. So it's our own home group's coffee pot. I guess you could still spread it to other people through coffee making, maybe. I'm not sure.
I was kind of confused about the coffee thing too, but so are places open to do that? Like, from what I understood of the way it read, it specifically says that religious institutions can open for religious services. Like, it specifically has that language in there to not include other purposes.
I guess you could get into the discussion on what is open. So the facility that we meet at, like, we have a key to it, and would only be open during the time of our meeting, which again, I've heard it again, and I don't know if this is true because I personally haven't researched it, but I've heard it again said, and this was in Maryland, that recovery meetings are an essential service, and we technically could have been meeting all along. And again, I don't know where that comes from or who makes that decision, but someone else said it again on Facebook. So I don't know if it's true, but someone said that recovery meetings are considered an essential service. The facilities themselves, I mean, I guess, is it up, like, is a church, is open to the public the same thing as being open for a meeting? I guess. I don't know.
So
is there a distinction?
Right. The information I have, and I haven't researched this either, so this is not coming from my mouth or research. This is coming from Caroline, who said, that she did a lot of research in this area to find out if we were essential in Maryland. And from what she understands, we are not currently. That's why the petition was out there, to try to make us like other states who have that in place. But from what I read of the governor's newest, phase 1 reopening plan or whatever that's out there, it specifically states that churches can open up for religious services at 50% capacity, which would mean they can't open up beyond that. Like, they were kind of forced into closing too. And I've also read that a lot of these churches, even with the new recommendations, aren't opening up yet. Like, they're not, regardless of the fact that they can. But I would just say that, to me, the way I read it, it read as if they were not allowed to hold other things or be open for other things. So I don't know. Yeah,
then I wonder, well, I guess that wouldn't matter too much. But we had talked about reaching out to the church and making sure they would be okay with us meeting there, or just meeting outside, just meeting out in the parking lot.
Right.
Just as that's what the address is on the meeting schedule. So that's where people are going to go. So we could just meet, which we've had our meetings outside before anyway. It wouldn't be anything new.
Right. Yeah. So, and that was part of what got talked about at area was Caroline brought up, like, she's been in touch with Hartford County Parks and Recreation, trying to see the feasibility of, like, having their pavilions. And so trying to have a meeting that meets regularly once or twice a week at their pavilions at the park, right? So we're outdoors, we're going to social distance, and then we're going to further that, hopefully, by having the ability to, if it's more than 10 people, take the excess number and go off to another pavilion and still have, we're not turning people away. And so I found that to be a pretty interesting concept, but areas seem to be against the idea of allowing a new meeting to start to do that. I don't know if area itself, the chairperson, was pretty against it. He was rather biased, I think. They don't have a right to tell anybody who can do anything. I mean, any members can go start a meeting whenever they want. And that was the exact point I made, Billy. I said, people don't need area's fucking blessing to go start an NA meeting. That's not how this works. Like, obviously, if you start a meeting, you can't put it on the area's website, maybe, but you're still a fucking meeting. If you're a meeting, you're a meeting when you say you are. And so that he was trying to say something about whether you could use NA readings or I highly disagreed, and I wanted to ask you about that. That was kind of one of the things. I'm like, I don't, group without even having to be a part of any area. You don't, right. I can start a group here in Cecil County and ask to be part of the Baltimore area if I want. Like, there's no governance of the area over groups. But anyway, I know. I didn't like any of it. I was like, damn it, I need more people in this place to tell me I'm right. But I don't even need to go there and ask them. I can just do whatever I want tomorrow. And that was the exact point I made. Show up and say, hey, I'm meeting here. Anybody wants to meet here? Meet here. We're having an NA meeting. And that's all I need. Bro, I told them about my home group. I'm like, look, my home group is currently meeting. Like, and they took themselves off the schedule because they're not going to guarantee that they're there in the rain. But that's a fucking meeting. Like, you can't tell them they're not. There's no such thing as a sanctioned NA meeting. Like, there's no such, it doesn't exist. Well, and groups can decide where they want to meet. I mean, you could do that two ways. One, you could start a new group and say, we're a new group. We're meeting on this day. Or another home group can say,
we're also meeting on this day. Now we meet our regular day Thursday, and we're meeting Sunday at the fucking park. Like,
right.
you don't, yeah, that's,
Well,
don't
and
have
I
any.
think the argument or what they were pushing for, the individual wanted the ability to put that meeting on the area's schedule. And that's what area was, or the individual at area was bucking against, was every time we allow meetings to start without blah, 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 they end up closing quick, and then we got to take them off the schedule. I know it's so hard to delete them off the online fucking schedule.
Takes like
Jesus.
5 minutes.
Right, if that. And so it was really interesting to see that. But yeah, so I just thought the idea of the park was a pretty good idea. I've been to another fellowship where they do, I don't know if they do it at every meeting, but the meeting I went to, that's what they did. They would meet up, and if they had a group conscience rule, if there was more than 16 people, you counted off by twos and went to 2 different rooms. And it wasn't for this. It was just because that's how they worked, and they wanted everybody to have time to share. And they even had it like I think they had at one point more than 24, and you went to 3 different rooms, and it was like, that was just how they operated. And so it's not unheard of. Like we can do things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The only thing we got on Instagram about it was the person that said that they weren't there yet either, to be ready to go back out and be patient and kind to others and herself and do what feels right for you. And pretty open and accepting way of life. I like that. We did also get a message on Instagram from Stephanie, who talked about she would like to hear podcast about each principle and how to incorporate it into daily life, and also podcast about the traditions, because she doesn't know as much about them. And so I thought a little bit about that. I think I sent you a text earlier this week to just kind of I like the idea. I think we've had the idea of like cliches podcast. I've been wanting to do that for a while, and I don't know if we could fit every cliche into one podcast, or if it would have to be like a 2 or 3 parter. There's a lot of cliches. But I would like to dissect them and talk about whether they're actually useful or fucking stupid, because some of them are definitely stupid. So maybe we will get around to the principle and the cliche stuff. I guess at some point we'll run out of other shit to talk about or something. The traditions, I was thinking we'd probably end up doing that next year, like tradition a month, like we do the step a month this year.
Yeah, that would be fun. The traditions are interesting.
Will we be around that long?
Yeah. Well, it hasn't. I'm out of pocket $0 at this point, so I can keep going indefinitely.
Yeah. I do want us to have a little studio at some point. I think that'd be awesome.
I mean, I'm still in. We not canceled, but we came back from our beach trip yesterday just to be here to do this today. So
really,
yeah,
we were doing it remotely. You could have just took your computer.
Yeah, we could have. I mean, we could have, and that wasn't the only reason. Obviously, we had some other reasons too, but that was into the decision making. Was like, it's almost like my home group now. Like, this is what I do on Sunday mornings, and now Jen's kind of seen that this is a commitment that's pretty regular. That I'm pretty, I don't want to say rigid, but I'm pretty committed to, and it weighs heavily in my decisions on what I'm doing with my weekend.
That's funny. I was thinking the other day that if we ever had to like miss one, or one of us had to miss one, we could either, I mean, we did it before, we recorded on another night, but I was like, we could always have like a guest co-host too. That would be kind of interesting. Like Billy did one with somebody else one week, and then if he had to vacation and I did one with somebody else, that'd be cool, I guess. Yeah.
And the truth is, now we kind of know how easy this is to do remotely if it had to happen. I mean, I'm still pushing. I'm ready to meet back in person, and you're not, obviously, but it's really not a major hurdle to do this remotely.
So it's not right now, but this right now is Google Meet is offering the free recording, which has come out pretty well sound wise. So when they stop offering that because of the pandemic, it will become difficult again, because then we need some other way to record this, and that might be trickier. This is pretty simple. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm jealous I can't have this forever. I'm going to actually pick my future job based on if they have Google Meet recording access.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously I would think it's a service you can pay for. Do you know roughly what they charge?
So here's the difficulty in that. From what I understand, they have different tiers of their business level, and the recording thing is an add-on. and so you have to pay for it. So, but first you would have to pay to get the service of Google Meet per employee for your business, and then you would have to pay for the add-on of recording. And I don't know if you can do that on a one-person basis.
Gotcha.
I have access to Google Meet through a nonprofit, which is cool, but I don't think the nonprofit has the ability to have the add-on, which is, it's so fucking convoluted. It's like,
they can't make it simple.
maybe they will after this, because they've kind of opened up Google Meet to the average user now. So maybe after this, it will become a paid add-on. I'd pay $5 a month if we were using it.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, that was pretty much all the recap of people from last week. I love the ideas. Thank you for anybody who sends in ideas about topics and those types of things. That's great. I think that does fit in, and maybe that's something we'll hop around to addressing soon. Like I said, I don't know. We didn't really have a topic this week till we showed up today, so
yeah,
I'm still not sure it's a topic. But yeah, maybe we'll hit those principles and cliches in upcoming episodes. That could be fun. I know next week we got Jenny. We're gonna do that. Did I tell you that? Did I not tell you that?
I think you did. I think you did
okay.
get back to me about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So next week we're gonna talk about the Recovery Dharma program.
Yeah. So she was supposed to come on before the pandemic really hit. She was like one of that first or second week we went into actual stay-at-home order. She was supposed to come in, wasn't it, or was it right before that? Anyway. It was right around the time all this started. Yeah.
Yeah, it was right then. And then she was like, it might be safer not to. And then so we talked to her, and they actually started meeting back up last week in person. And I think they're outside.
Yep. Yeah, outside. Yeah.
And she said there was only like 4 or 5 people that were probably coming anyway. So they should be able to social distance pretty well and follow guidelines. But we'll be able to talk to her about that too and get that experience. And so it's Recovery Dharma, right? That's the name of the program?
Yes, that is the name of the program.
And what's the other one that was before that?
It used to be called
Buddhism Recovery.
It wasn't called that, but I can't remember what it was called now.
I feel like it was something with a B. Maybe not.
Yeah, I can't. I gotta look it up.
Well, it was called something else, and then somebody slept with some people, and now it's Recovery Dharma.
Yeah.
Because that's how that thing works. So I don't know. Do you want to take the quick break now and then come back and talk about our shopping cart experiment? Or
yeah, that sounds good. That sounds like a good plan.
Perfect. We'll pause now for our break. You'll hear the voices and then we'll be right back, and we'll get to today's topic, maybe, because it takes us forever to get to shit. What is it?
Refuge Recovery. It was called Refuge Recovery.
That is not a B and sounds nothing like Buddhist recovery.
So it is a Buddhist path to recovery. But that's what it was called.
I was way off. All right, let's hit our break and we'll be right back.
I've been having a weird thing with my ears being real dry. I don't know if that's an old man thing because I do have hair growing in my ears now.
Dry as in they feel dry or just itchy?
Itchy. Yeah, I guess itchy I would call it, and like flaky.
Mine are itchy and flaky too. That's so weird. I wonder. And I've had some other weird itchy stuff, and I'm like on my neck, and I'm like, is this like part of being inside? I'm not inside that much. What the hell?
Yeah.
So weird.
Huh. Too much headphones. That's what it is. Headphone ears. Something all this rubber we're putting around our fucking orifices.
It would not in the least shock me that it would be some ironic situation where like we tried to protect ourselves from dying from coronavirus but died from rubber in the ear or something, like
some plastic poisoning that seeps through your ear membrane.
Right. Sitting home from coronavirus, we'd all die from Wi-Fi exposure or some shit. Like it would. That's the irony of my life for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I'll bring it back up and then I'll let you, you seem to have some thoughts about it. So I'll just let you take over after I describe the thing. All right. So we are going to get to the shopping cart. I call it the shopping cart thing, is what I wrote on my fucking notes. That's great. I saw this thing the other day. So an old philosophical concept is the idea that you're looking at a train's going down the tracks. If you do nothing, 5 people are on the tracks and they're all going to die. And yet there's a switch, a lever right in front of you. You're at the train station. You're too far away to flag the people. There's not enough time, but there's a switch in front of you, and you see you can pull the switch and the train will not hit these 5 people and kill them. Unfortunately, there's one person on that track. And so you are going to kill the one person if you pull the lever, but you save the 5. And so it's the philosophical thought experiment of, by doing nothing, 5 people die, and you can do something and, one person dies. And that seems like the greater good, to save the 5 and, lose the 1. That seems like generally what people in society would go for. And yet it's not quite that simple, right? We like to think that saving more people is better, but at the same time, by you pulling that lever, you are actively killing someone. You are making a decision to kill a person. Whereas the other side of that is, yes, those 5 people are going to die, but there's nothing you could do about that, right? And then I guess it gets into the trickiness of like who we value more. I'm sure if people would say if the one person was the president or somebody important, a doctor who, could possibly cure cancer, they would obviously want to save him over the 5 and all kinds of stuff. So anyway, based on this old philosophical, thought process, we came across the shopping cart version, right? And it was described as you can do nothing and your shopping cart sits in the parking lot after you're done shopping and loading your car, or you can pull the lever and you take your shopping cart over to the little cart kiosk or whatever you'd like to call it, the little tented place, or sometimes it's not tented, but where the carts go, the cart corral, we'll call it. And so basically what they were explaining is there's no consequence or punishment for just leaving the cart where it is, right? Like you don't get arrested. There's no fine. Nobody's going to give you a ticket. Nobody is, you're not going to get struck by lightning by leaving the cart there. Like there's no real penalty to doing that. The only difference is, taking it to the cart corral is basically beneficial for everybody else in the world. And so judging by that, they were saying that's kind of the ultimate defining quality of whether you are altruistic or not, whether you care about other people, even if it doesn't really benefit you, because there's no real benefit to taking the cart to the cart corral, except it helps others. It's good. It's out of people's way. It helps the workers. They're all gathered up nicely for them to take them up. And this was the process of it. And so we kind of talked about this a little bit already before we started recording. And we thought it was a kind of interesting topic to talk about. Like what is right in that situation? And I'll let Billy take it away. He had some good ideas going on.
Yeah, so one of the reasons I thought this was kind of relevant to our current situation is because of the situation with wearing face coverings or masks or whatever when we're out in public. Obviously, there is some, what I would call minor, maybe some people think it's a major inconvenience to wearing masks when you're out in public. But there is a sort of idea of like a greater good, like you're potentially helping so many people that you don't know or don't see or don't necessarily interact with, that, it's just if nothing else, it's just a kind gesture that you can do that takes a minimal amount of effort. But you see that there are a lot of people that are seem to be harshly against it and feel like it is just this major injustice. And so when you describe that cart dilemma, I thought of that as like a kind of similar thing. For me, I like to say that I'm a person that takes the cart back almost all the time. There's very few times where I will not take it back, which is a whole nother conversation. Or what are the times that I feel justified in not taking it back? And how come most of the time I will do it? I feel like it's such a minimal amount of effort. sometimes it's just looking how close is the closest cart return. Is it 30 feet? Is it 80 feet? Is the one over where I'm going to take the cart overly full and I can't fit another cart in it? I'm going to have to push it over there and try to get it out of the way anyway. All those sort of decisions that come in to what feels like such a minor thing. But yeah, so this cart dilemma for me brought up the thinking of how I don't know that I am ever 100% in on either. I don't know that as many times as I like to say, yeah, the right thing is to take the cart back. There are going to be times, there are going to be occasions, there are going to be instances where my self-centeredness wins out, whether it's self-centeredness, I'll call it self-centeredness, could be laziness, could be inconvenience, whatever. They're all versions of self-centeredness. But even though 9 times out of 10 I'll do the right thing, there's always that 1 out of 10 where I am not taking that fucking cart back and justifying and rationalizing it and getting in my cart and driving away. And then what I've noticed is I usually remember those times because there is a sense of guilt or a sense of irresponsibility that comes along with that. But even, as recently as the last probably month, there have been times where I have not taken the cart back. And
so what does that mean exactly? Do we think this is a good experiment to tell something about people? Like, is this relevant?
Well, I think it's important to understand that not everyone can be based on one decision that they make. You know what I mean? Like, we are in our lives, we are a combination of the whole of our decisions. It's holding people. So we see this a lot in politics right now, and it's kind of disgusting. It's like, oh, you made one bad decision back in 1987 about this one bad thing, so that encompasses the whole character of who you are now 30 years later. And I don't know that that's fair to people. It's not fair to me. If you were to hold me to the standard of, hold on, somebody's trying to have me join a meeting. I don't know that if you held me to whatever the worst decision that I made in the last 30 days, if that's a fair assessment of my character as a whole. I think that as people, we are sort of complex, and that what we hope is that we can overcome some of our bad tendencies, that we can learn to become better people. But I don't think it's a total, what do they call that? Like a net sum thing where it's like you're all this or all that. Like, no, most of the time I'm a good person, but I'm still occasionally a shitty person, and I gotta kind of be okay with that.
Yeah, no, I think that's interesting. And so I was kind of sitting here thinking about this for me. Like, I'm pretty sure I do take the cart back, period. Like, I think that's just what I do. But why? Right? Is it the guilt feeling I'll have if I don't? I'm sure that's part of it. I was curious if I did the right thing there because I'm capable of it. And so if I don't try to do all the right capable things I can do to make up for the times when I'm a shitty person and I'm not capable of being different, right? The times when, like, I'm overly angry with my kids that I don't want to be, and for whatever reason, I don't have control of that. And so maybe in life, I try to do all these other right things perfectly to make up for those times I know I don't have any ability for whatever reason yet to be better. And so I don't know. And that kind of led me, when you were talking about not judging people by their worst moment, I was like, well, does this mean we're all actually even? Like, is every person in the world truly even in their ability of right and wrong? And it's just in different areas. And so we tend to look at some areas more important than others. But the fact is, honestly, we're all doing some level of right and some level of wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think there is definitely people that have tendencies towards being more self-centered and more evil, if you want to use the word evil. I mean, obviously, we know there's extremes of personalities, and there are evil people in the world, the sort of serial killer, mass murder, You know, I guess serial killers maybe are different than mass murderers. That's a whole other conversation. But, you know, in general, I think there are evil people that do more harm than good. I think for me as a person in recovery, there was a large part of my life where I was a person that probably did more harm than good. And now I'm trying to reverse that through this process of recovery, through learning how to live spiritually. Um, that's sort of one of those ways I've tried to explain recovery to earth people, normal people, whatever, is to be like, when I was a person that used a lot, I tended to be really sort of self-centered, self-serving, and knowing that it was wrong didn't give me the tools to live any differently. You know, I still lived self-centered, self-serving, because that's all that I knew. And when I found a 12-step recovery and found, you know, a process of sort of what I'll call fixing my bad thinking through working these steps, it made a lot more sense than someone just saying, like, don't you just have this conscious that tells you that what you're doing is wrong? And it's like, kind of, but I've learned to like ignore that son of a bitch. You know, that conscious is very inconvenient. And, you know, but this process of steps has given me, you know, step work has given me like these incremental changes that I can make that lead to a greater change. But you know, that underlying, what I'll call that underlying addiction, that underlying self-centeredness is still there sometimes. You know, it still creeps up on days that I'm not at my best or I'm not fully awake. And I think it's nice to be able to give other people that leeway too, to not hold people to whatever, you know. For example, you know, you see the guy, like I know I do, if I saw a guy, you know, drive down the road and not use a turn signal, it's easy to be like, what an irresponsible asshole. Doesn't he know he can kill somebody by not just using a turn signal? It takes a minimal amount of effort to use a turn signal. And yet I know that in my life, I have changed lanes without using a turn signal. I know that it's happened and I've done the same thing. And when I'm doing those things, I'm not like going, yeah, fuck other people. And I don't care if I kill someone and who knows, you know. It's usually like I got something in one hand and my hand's over here, but I really need to change lanes. And I'm like, fuck, I got to do this, but I know it's not right, but I do it anyway. You know, like looking at things from that perspective helps me to be a little more understanding of other people and a little more compassionate towards other people living their life. You know, and the times that I don't return the shopping cart are not times where I'm going, yeah, fuck some asshole that works at Walmart. He can come get this cart. You know, that's his goddamn job anyway. Like, that's not usually my thinking behind that. But if I see someone not return the cart, that's what I think their thinking is. You know what I mean? Like, it's weird how I'll fall into that pattern.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I do the same thing. I'm guilty of judging people for things that I have done, for sure. I don't think that I'm thinking that they're running around being malicious in the sense of, yeah, fuck the guy at Walmart, he's got to get the cart. I think they're being self-centered, because that's where I'm at when I am doing those things. I'm like, what I got to do is more important than other people. Like, that's just the way it is right now. It's not important enough for me to go out of my way for anybody else. I'm, you know, totally consumed by what I'm doing. Not always. There's times when I'm just unconsciously self-centered and not realizing it. But there's also times when I'm actively making that choice to make someone else's life harder because it makes mine easier. Like, it is what it is.
Well, and are there times where that's true? You know what I mean? Like, are there times where what's going on in my life is definitely more important? Like, you know, it's always the sort of scenario that people play out. At least for me, I should say it this way. I try to play out a scenario in my head that makes me less judgmental of bad drivers, for example, or people that cut me off. And it's the thing of like, oh, maybe that guy's wife or family members in the hospital in some emergency, and he's just trying to get there as quick as possible. that's why he's driving like an idiot and cutting people off. Maybe it's not that he's just some irresponsible, crazy person, but maybe there is a reason why he needs to be driving that way. And if his family member was in the hospital on their deathbed, or his wife was in labor, maybe it is okay that he cut me off. Maybe it's really not that big a deal, and I don't need to stay on my self-righteous high horse. Like, maybe in that case, his needs are greater than mine in that moment.
And this is why I return the cart every goddamn time, because I can't help my self-righteousness.
Right.
That's where I don't look so happy and positive all the time, because my self-righteousness does shine through. Because I look, the behavior is not my problem, right? The guy who cuts me off, maybe he was in an urgent ride to see his wife one last time in the emergency room, and I don't have a problem with that. My problem is that as a society, I feel like people are fucking entitled, and I'm just over it. I'm over their entitlement. Like, I hate me when I'm acting entitled. I hated all my entitled behavior throughout my active addiction. And now seeing that mirror reflected to me of most of society acting like entitled little fucks drives me crazy. I hate it. And so, look, this whole conversation, people, for you all that don't know, Billy and I had like a good hour plus of like debating what's going on a little bit before this happened. And Billy is one of, if not the only person, one of less than 5 people that I could have had that conversation with and not fucking hated them afterwards, honestly.
Thank you.
And so that shit's going on YouTube for sure, but I don't want to get back into that discussion for the podcast whatsoever. I try to keep our podcast away from the politics to the best of our ability. But that's kind of where this stemmed from, was we were debating, whether we should still be quarantined, whether the government should have the quarantine ability to do that, whether they're actually stealing rights, whether people are just entitled. We have different sides of that. And so we were discussing a lot of those ideas. And that's kind of what led us to the shopping cart thing, talking about the masks and what's a right. So people who don't return shopping carts, is that against, to the detriment of others? I feel like it's a little different, because obviously if you leave your shopping cart out, you're probably not going to, catch a virus that kills somebody that you pass it to. Like, that's a little different in that sense with the mask equation. I don't know. Nothing the government has done yet has made me feel like my rights were trampled on or taken from me. I feel like everything I'm doing in line with the government guidelines, I guess, has been to help people. I just feel like I'm doing a good thing. I don't feel like anything's been robbed of me. I feel like I'm sacrificing because hopefully it helps. That's how I've looked at it. And so I'm trying to put that into the shopping cart thing somehow. Like, I think that's the same way I look at it. I do it because I think it helps, not because it does anything for me. I don't know. And what does that mean for people who never return the shopping cart?
Yeah, and I think for me that like I say, the shopping cart dilemma thing. I tend to be a person who's really critical of other people. I'm critical of myself, so I'm really critical of other people. And what I'll call my nature is to think the worst of people, to always think that their intentions are selfish and self-serving. And that's, whether it's true or not, isn't as important as understanding that thinking that way makes me, I'm going to say, makes me a worse person. And I'll kind of go the other way with that. So giving people the benefit of the doubt, assuming that there's an emergency, there's some crisis, there's some reason that's greater than me that they need to do this selfish act, gives me a place to be a better person. If I'm always looking at it that people are selfish and self-serving and, assholes, which again, probably true. But if I always look at it with those glasses, then I sort of throw the innocent people who aren't living that way into that boat, versus throwing the shitty self-centered people into the good boat. And I, as a person, react better in my life on a daily basis even when I throw the shitty people into the good boat, you know what I mean? Like then I can react in a way that's like, hey, I don't need to get all angry. I don't need to maybe fucking run my mouth or make my snarky comments at them or, shoot some sarcasm their way. Like I can just assume that, oh, they must have needed that better. And trust me, I'm definitely not perfect at that. I still have my days where I make my comments and say my stuff and flick people off or cut me off on the highway. But those are the things that then I feel shitty about myself. And I feel like, God, now that's not the person I want to be. The person I want to be is like a compassionate, understanding, and kind human being. I think for me, where this came in with the masks, and again, us talking about some of this before this kind of led me to this understanding is early on in the pandemic, me and my family were people that started sort of wearing masks or started down that path before they even, made it the law. We said, hey, we're wearing these masks to help protect other people. It's not necessarily to protect us. And it's really a minor inconvenience to wear a mask to go out into the store and whatever. So let's just do it, because it's helpful and it sets a message. It sets a tone to everyone else. Like, yes, we care about other people. And now that it's been that way for a couple weeks, now it's been a law. What I started realizing was if they reversed the law or reversed it where I didn't have to wear a mask in public, my immediate reaction is to be like, yeah, fuck that mask. I'm not wearing it anymore in public. And I don't think that's the person that I want to be. Like, I think I still want to be a person that cares enough. I don't want to let that self-centeredness creep in. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to let that, for me. No, I'm not saying if you're a guy that's out in the store not wearing a mask because fuck that and you want your rights and all that stuff, like, I get it. And that should be your right, whether it's to wear a mask. I wish people would be more considerate. I wish people would sort of take this seriously. But I can see how easy it is to creep into that self-centered place. Like it happens with me. I do it myself if I'm not being really fucking self-aware.
That's interesting. I remember going to the store. It was right before the mask thing started, and I looked at my wife and I was like, I think we got to wear masks, and she was like completely against it. And I'm not trying to, like, I don't think she realized the seriousness. I just think she didn't really want to wear a mask because it's awkward and she didn't want to be noticeable to people. Like, oh my God, look at that weirdo with a mask on, right? I think that was her deal. But I just could not picture myself going to the store without it, even if it really doesn't help me, it feels like it does. Like, it feels like it's safer to wear that shit than it feels without it. Yeah. And that's where I was at. I'm like, you know what? I'm not taking any chances. I'm wearing this bitch. Like, I don't give a fuck. And so that's kind of where I'm at today. Honestly, when people say we don't have to wear them anymore, I'm like, I don't know about that. I think I'm going to keep mine on for a while. I might never stop wearing this shit.
Yeah. Well, and that was one of the, to play the devil's advocate about the masks. Now you're starting to see all these, like, the negative effects of wearing a mask, and you're fucking re-inhaling your own CO2 or some shit. It's like just weird stuff that people say, like, and I want to sort of shake my head and go, really? Is that really a concern? Like, but, there is a level of inconvenience to it. There is a level of, I've had one time where, like, we live like a block and a half from the hardware store. And there was a time I walked down to the hardware store and got to the door and went, fuck, I forgot my mask. Then I had to turn around and walk home and then turn around and walk back. And it was like, if it wasn't a law, would I have just went in the store anyway and did my shopping without going back and getting a mask? Where does my responsibility level sort of top out?
It's interesting. I almost feel like it's like, and I guess maybe because I have two teenagers and I see this a lot, it just feels like our population is very like, I don't even know if a lot of people believe in not wearing masks. It's just almost like a, you told me to, so I'm not gonna. It's very much seems like
Yeah.
I don't want to be told what to do. And it's, I don't know. I just find that so weird. I look at my daughters who do the same exact thing. It's like you tell them to eat with a fork in their right hand and they eat with a fork in their left hand or something, or a spoon, or it's like, what the fuck? Like, just being contrary just to be contrary.
And I would have to go back and get the exact, setup for it. But there was a thing on, I think it was 2020. Dr. Fauci was on 2020 telling people that masks weren't fucking useful. And I'm like, wait a minute. You guys were just telling, first you said we shouldn't wear masks, then you say we should, and now you're saying it's not helpful. It's like, what the fuck? Like,
Right.
You kind of, even with that stuff, you get so many mixed messages, and again, for me, I try not to moralize my decisions onto other people because they probably don't have the information. At least that's what I like to think. I like to think they just don't have the information to make good decisions, and that if we could do a better job at educating and setting an example, and it's sort of like, even with wearing a mask, like I'm all for it. I think people should do it. I think it's great. But I don't think if I go out and try to shame people into it and guilt them into it and tell them how fucking irresponsible they are and what a selfish jerk they're being, like, I don't think that's going to encourage them to be responsible stewards in their community. Like, I think there's a better way of going about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the right way for sure. And it's so hard to like navigate this conversation and not bring back up so much of what we talked about. I'm like trying my damnedest to avoid a lot of those areas. So one thing I will ask, and this kind of came up, it's sort of relevant to the shopping cart thing, maybe. Definitely relevant to that entire hour of conversation we had where, it seems like over a couple month period, you have changed your mind about some of these things that we were doing. And I had asked about, if numbers and stuff that you were paying close attention to early on. And you said you weren't really looking at a whole lot of that now. And so it came up to me, and this is something that was posed to me a long time ago. Are we what we put in us? Like, are we a product of what we put into us, whether that's information, music, art, people's opinions? Like, are we a product of whatever it is we're surrounding ourselves with? There's the idea you are the average of your closest four friends and, all those kind of things. But I asked this because it seemed that before you were very in line with reading numbers and reading information from experts in maybe other countries and what seemed to be trustable information. Obviously I don't think any of us trust our media or government all that much on either side. So I don't think we read too much about what comes out of, the US information wise, but it seemed like you were putting this other outside information that seemed relevant into you and you had one opinion. And I was just curious if you felt like stopping that information had given you a different opinion, because now what you're putting into you is your day-to-day behavior and interactions, right? Like, oh, I go to work and nothing bad happens. I talk to people at work and nothing bad happened to them. So that's what I'll go with is my immediate experience instead of more info.
Well, and I would actually say it's almost on top of that. I have listened to a couple of different podcasts with people that are scientific people, sort of the other way. Like I've looked for some of that information. Like, okay, well, who's out here saying, it's okay to open up, and who's out here saying that this stuff isn't as bad as they say it is, and what's their point of view, and where are they coming from with some of this? And so the answer to your first question is 100% yes. I think we are definitely a product of what information we put into us. That's why motivational speaking works. That's why having a trainer at the gym works. You know what I mean? Like, we need that outside influence to be like, hey, this is the right thing to be doing. This is what that helps us overcome our own barriers, hang-ups. Like, for me personally, that's the point of going to meetings and sponsorship. It's like I need that outside influence, that outside point of view, that direction from some people that I think have an intelligent perspective. Because again, left to my own devices, I tend to, believe my own hype, so I need influences of people outside of myself. I think for me personally, where I've gotten sort of lost in some of this, the numbers coming out of like what I'll call like the government or the media side of things, are hearing of what I would call typical corruption of the system, which has been things like, so hospitals right now are suffering, some of them, because one, they haven't seen this huge intake of patients that they thought was going to happen, at least not in most hospitals. Some hospitals have been overwhelmed. There are definitely some hospitals in New York that have been hit very hard, that have really, people have had to go out, but a lot of hospitals haven't. They've cut out all these elective surgeries. They have this drastic decrease in patients. So now, if they can get more federal money of these COVID dollars that are out there, that's how they're helping to sort of recoup some of this financial impact that this has had on them. So they are now financially incentivized to, I'm not even going to say lie. I don't think it's some grand conspiracy that they're just making shit up. There's some of that out there, but that they have now a financial invested interest to sort of make this seem worse than it is. There's one or two speculative pieces on Dr. Fauci, why he would have reasons to take a specific political point of view about why this is so bad and stuff like that. So there are those points of view out there. I don't totally succumb to the, like, this is all conspiracy and like, no, I personally feel like this was something we didn't know about. This virus, this sickness came out of sort of nowhere. All of a sudden it started infecting a bunch of people. People were dying. I mean, it was very serious. And so we took it really serious. Now it feels like, okay, we've kind of got a handle on it. We've kind of got a grasp on what's going on. And so we can take some personal responsibility to live in a way that's going to help minimize or reduce risks without having such a dramatic and even sometimes negative impact on the quality of lives of hundreds of millions of people. So I think what we did up to this point, totally justified. I'm not saying we shouldn't have done it. I don't think it was wrong, but I think we can roll back some of that, still encourage some really personal, hey, social distancing, probably a really good idea right now. Don't have 30 people at your house in a fucking cookout. It's probably not a great idea. Wearing masks, pretty minimal impact, pretty simple thing that most people can do. I think it's a really responsible thing to do. That's great. Should I not be able to get a haircut or take my dog to the dog groomers? That seems a little excessive. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Now, I'm not going to fucking lose any sleep if they don't do that tomorrow. And I'm not protesting the government that they should open it up so that my dog can get a fucking haircut. I don't care that much. But I think that impacts those people in a way that I don't necessarily see or understand, that affects people, that barbers and barber shops, and that affects dog groomers in those businesses, and that affects some of these other people in a really negative way, that I think is a little extreme.
Damn it, you took us right into the heart of the material, didn't you? God, how to respond to that without...
I guess I would try to minimize out of that by saying, I think we can, whether it's the government or whether it's me or whether it's you or whether it's anybody else, trying to force good decision-making and morality on other people just never really seems to work. Like we really need to do it. I think we'll have better results from a place of love and compassion and understanding and encouraging people. And maybe that's a very optimistic way of looking at society as a whole. But again, I always try to, for myself personally, try to go back to the optimism side of things, because it allows me to live as a better person. It allows me to be a better human being when I'm coming at people from an optimistic point of view. And when I say, look, if I just try to encourage people or educate people, and at work, those little 5-second conversations, you know what I mean? A guy at work says, well, them fucking masks don't help me anyway. I could take that couple of minutes to go, hey, you know what? I've been told you're not really wearing the mask for you. You're wearing that mask for other people, so that when you're out in the store, while you're out working all day, if you come across that virus, you're not spreading it to other people. If you got it, you got it. And, that's really a shame. But you can help spreading that by wearing a mask when you go into the grocery store. Like, I think that's a better approach than saying you have to wear a fucking mask when you go into the grocery store. Don't ask any questions. You just do it because we fucking told you to.
I will clarify that we are not doctors or disease experts or biologists or any fucking thing else. So, our views are definitely our own and don't represent what anyone should be doing in their life right now, or what is fair and operative procedure for this. We have opinions and thoughts and theories, but they don't exactly qualify as expert stuff that anyone should follow. And I don't know if we could get sued for that, or just that I want to qualify that we have our own opinions.
I'm definitely not an expert, and I don't know what you should be doing. Don't listen to me.
I guess some of the stuff, I haven't heard any super strong arguments yet that convince me otherwise, basically, is where I'm at with it. I'd love to believe that we can help people be better by taking those minutes to explain things and trying to be compassionate with them. But I don't believe as a whole that people are so wonderful already that they will take into consideration other people's lives without somebody telling them to. I just don't. I think we have those rules. We talked about, I mentioned seatbelts and stuff like that. We got to protect people from themselves. We got to tell people you have to wear a seatbelt to save yourself. Right. And you say that comes with a privilege. I don't think it's really any different. I think we got to tell people how to fucking live. And if we don't, they'd run around shooting people like the Old West and doing what they felt like doing. And so I don't see where this would ever happen without some kind of regulation in place. The hospital thing doesn't completely make sense to me. Like, do I believe that hospitals would take advantage of this situation to get more money? Fucking right they would. Who wouldn't? Right? Like, this is what we all do. Oh my God, I could get an extra $5 on my taxes back if I marked that I bought, a Snickers bar at Royal Farms last year. Fuck yeah, I bought a Snickers bar at Royal Farms. So yeah, of course, there's going to be situations where hospitals mark some deaths as associated with this that might not have been completely associated with this. But if the intent was to make up for all the elective procedures they're not doing, that's ass backwards, because hospitals would want to lower the numbers to get back to the elective procedures and all the money they can make from it. So that doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. They would want this shit to be over to open back up.
Yeah, but they're forced to follow the national guidelines, national health guidelines. They can't.
Yeah.
They can't just go, fuck them guys. We're doing what we want.
Well, to some extent they can. Maryland just opened up elective procedures like a week or two ago. Like, it's not federal, that's a state thing. And if they had lowered the numbers sooner, like if they're misreporting and they could have reported normal numbers sooner and opened up sooner, they would have. Like, they would have gotten back to the money as soon as they could have. So that I'm not sold on that. That seems like some tinfoil theory to me. I don't buy that. It doesn't make any sense. I'm all about common sense. And to me, common sense in this world is people make decisions based on the most money they could get, the highest profit and benefit for them, right? People put money at the top of their list of things that are important, and things will make sense if you look to where is the most money being made. And so that theory and that standpoint doesn't make sense to me. I think they would have made the choice to get back to the big money that they could have made, as opposed to getting a couple extra dollars per death. But
I don't think they were concerned about getting overwhelmed by people with coronavirus in the beginning.
No, they were, but as soon as they realized that wasn't a thing, they'd have wanted to go back to normal to make their money. It's kind of like Disney World. Disney World would be open right now if it wasn't a safety issue. Like if there's money you can make, let's get back to it.
And that's why they're opening up elective procedures, because they're like, yeah, fuck yeah, we can get back to this. The state said it's okay, so we're doing it. You're not seeing any hospitals that are going, you know what? No, we're not doing elective procedures because we still don't think it's safe. Like they're all, now that they can, they're going to do it.
Yeah, I don't
have any hospitals say, oh, we can, but we're not because we think that that's irresponsible.
Yeah, I get that. I just don't think they would have like mass over reported numbers because that would have kept them shut down from elective procedures longer.
Yeah, and in the beginning, I think we all had a right to be fearful. I mean, obviously, the worst thing for the hospitals would have been to be overwhelmed with sick people that they couldn't take care of. That would be catastrophic. I mean, not just for their financial, but for our society. I mean, gosh, I would hope that they're making decisions for our health at least a little bit. You know?
Right. Like yeah, I don't.
They would err on the side of caution, but yeah.
I don't know though. So I guess back to try to get away from this more. Yeah, of this. How do we, if we know that what we put into us is what we are, right? And that means that we could on any given day be the guy who returns the shopping cart or who doesn't. The guy who gleefully wears a mask thinking that he's doing the right thing for people, or the guy who watches a different news channel and thinks somebody's robbing him of his rights. Like, how can we use that information to our benefit if we know that's what people are? So there was a time when, journalists and news stations felt an obligation to report both sides of every story, right? Hey, this is what one side kind of believes about it, and this is what the other side kind of believes about it. And here's that information. You put that all into you and come up with what makes sense for you. And we don't have that today. We have very one-sided stories being told all over the place, depending on which side you want to hear or what side you associate with, right? And so we have made it possible to completely surround yourself with only people who agree with one side, whether that's a news channel you watch, whether that's the Facebook groups you're a part of, whether that's the Facebook friends you have and haven't deleted yet because they talk some other side to you. So if we know we are what we put into us, and we have, because of our freedom, are allowed to choose to only hear half the story at any given point in time, how do we ever affect our population to want to be the people who put the shopping carts back, or the people who want to be the people who want to wear masks to help others? Like, I don't feel like we can ever reach those people because everything they put into them is the opposite. It's all some other thing. And I don't want to just say this in one direction of, how to convince them how to wear masks. Maybe it's to convince them not to wear masks, right? How do we do that too? Like, because people who don't watch that channel are going to think that masks are important.
Yeah. So, and I'll try to get, tie this in with recovery, because that's been most of my adult life experiences. Like, that's one of the, for me, been a great benefit of being a person involved in a 12-step recovery program. It's like those traditions and the things that we do in the program, I can go there, in our particular fellowship, like it's a spiritual based program. So I'm going there to learn about spiritual principles, hopefully in a way that's not political, that's not one-sided, that's not coming from a single perspective. And we have these traditions that help to keep some of that out of like a fellowship like ours, so that, because guess what? I'll just, not to out my political stance too much, I don't like Trump. I am not a Trump supporter. I hate Trump. But I know that I go to a home group that there's a couple guys in there that fucking love that guy, that think that he's great, and we'll occasionally banter back and forth and joke about it outside of the meeting or before the meeting. But when we get into that program, when we get into that, the actual living of the program, we realize that we are each individuals on a similar path through recovery. We're just other addicts trying to get a day clean. And that gives me a broader perspective on the world and a broader perspective on life. I don't, and again, this goes to something we talked about a couple weeks ago. I don't know where normal people get that influence. I don't know where Earth people, maybe that's the problem. Maybe they don't get that influence. And so their religion is Fox News, their spiritual teachings do come from this one-sided, or, CNN, whichever one. I know for me, luckily, I'm a person that gets to learn about spiritual principles, learn about compassion and understanding and open-mindedness, so that when I do talk to the people, because I work with some people that are also, right-wing, Trump-loving, fucking make America great again people. And I have really tried to practice talking to them about, because we'll talk about that stuff, but I try to do it from a place of understanding. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from, but have you thought about it this way? Have you looked at it this way? And I can only hope to influence the limited amount of people that are in my sphere through, my hopefully compassionate, understanding, open-minded way of talking about things, and create like a ripple effect. You know what I mean? Like, hopefully I can ripple out to those people who just maybe will stop hating on the other side so much, and just maybe be able to look at, even if they don't agree with me, they can at least say, I'm not some self-righteous fucking asshole that they can just dismiss and throw in the trash,
See, I don't know. I like to think that our program offers a place where it's not politicized, and maybe it's not political, but I find that I see the same problem. And it's so there are some people who are very political from our program on Facebook, and tend to constantly post hateful things about one side or the other, or things of that nature, or very much belittle people who have different beliefs. And that's not fucking spiritual to me. And I'm always questioning, like, what kind of program are you fucking working if that's your basis
Right.
of how you live? You're not carrying these principles into all your affairs whatsoever. I don't care how stupid you think someone is. That's not spiritual. But the other aspect is, I see it come up in, I don't know if it's politicized. I feel like this pandemic has been politicized, so it's hard to take the politics out of it. But I feel like there's decisions made in our fellowship or our program that are splitting people into one of two factions at all times, right? It seems like everybody just decides that there's going to be two factions for every fucking problem now, and that's how we're going to handle it. So I don't want to call it politicized, but it very much feels like it ties into politics. And like the people who say, well, we're a program about saving lives. We need to stay home and do virtual meetings. We have the ability to, let's save lives. And the other faction that says, no, you're fucking wrong. People are ODing because we don't have in-person meetings. And so we're not saving lives, we're hurting people. And which one's going to save more lives? The people who are meeting in person to stop the ODs, which is no guarantee you're going to stop the ODs, or the people who are, meeting online to not spread the virus. And it's like, it becomes I'm right, you're wrong. And that's where everybody's at. And it's this, what I'm reading about, all this black and white thinking, right? All this, there's one right way to handle this, and how we need to look for that Goldilocks thinking in the middle, right? This isn't too hot or too cold. It's just right. And I don't know what that is, but I just feel like when we surround ourselves with one input, or whatever input that we surround ourselves with, I don't know how to use that to our advantage to help people be more well-rounded, right? How do we get more well-rounded information to find that Goldilocks spot? Because we're just getting the hot information or the cold information. We're not getting that just right bed to lay down in and take a nap. And so I guess for me, it's disheartening that it's always like, oh my God, if you don't take these safety measures, you're a fucking ridiculously self-centered jerk. And, if not, let's all get our AR-15s and storm the Capitol. Like, what the fuck is the in-between? Like, where is the let's come to some common decency things to do for everybody, and then do the best we can with it.
And so, tying back to where we started with this, like, I think that's why it's important for people to think a little bit about stuff like the trolley dilemma. You know what I mean? It's important to think that, hey, I have an opinion here. I have what I think is going to be best for our society, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I need to be right. That doesn't mean that, there is even a right. I mean, again, in the trolley dilemma, is there a right in that dilemma? I don't know. And in fact, I'm not even sure what I should do. But we are in a point where people feel like they need to be forced into a corner. And I guess what I try to do is not let them force me into that corner. Like say, you and I can have a conversation where we disagree, but I don't by any means like get angry at you or think that you're wrong or think that your point of view is stupid. Like I'm able to sort of sit back and go, yeah, I can understand that. I can empathize with that. I might not necessarily agree with it, but it doesn't mean you don't have a valid concern that your things that you're bringing up aren't in ways true. I mean, yes, there are some risks. There are some things that, as a human being, I should be willing to acknowledge that you have some rightness in that whole trying to figure out what we're supposed to do moving forward. And those are the ways I think that we help to find that Goldilocks place. It's like if you just start yelling at me, then I'm going to get like my defensive walls are going to come up and then I'm going to hold stronger to my points of view. And then, I'm going to start yelling back and then your walls are, and then we're in the fucking, you're stupid and you don't know what you're talking about.
And so, yeah, right.
We are in a very weird, we're in a point in society where all this like social media and the separate like media being so biased and all that. I mean, I think this is fairly new for our society in the last 20 years, I'd say.
Yeah.
And hopefully, I mean, I can just cross my fingers and pray that this is a growing pain and that things are gonna get different. I mean, because so now I'm gonna go off on a little bit of a side thing, but almost like you talked about what's happening like social media and stuff is they figured out like, oh, we can get you to engage. And in fact, we can get you to engage more by picking a side and making you argumentative. Like if we can get you to be argumentative and get your anger up and your walls to come up, you're way more likely to engage with people online than if you're like in the middle and not really sure. And like me, I read a lot more stuff, but I don't engage and like and dislike and share and, all that shit. Like I don't do that. So in essence, social media isn't targeting me because they don't care about me. I'm not engaging with their platform enough. They care about the people, or what feeds them is the people that engage and post the negativity and get angry.
So I actually listened to a podcast about this a while back about when the time when they used to do a little bit of both sides of the information on every newscast or on every channel and give topics equal time. And that happened when it was governmentally regulated. And then when the regulation stopped, this is what you get. People doing what they want to do. And so this is, I think, that's a little jab in there to throw in that I don't think people, I get how you operate from a place of people are genuinely trying to do well. I think that's a beautiful place. And I do think that helps you to be a better person. And I can understand how that helps me to be a better person operating from that place. But to literally run the world as if people are better, I think is irresponsible because I don't think they are. I think they will, without regulation and being told what to do, their ugly nature will come out. Personally, I don't think they actually will do better. It's nice for me to believe they will in order for me to act better, but I don't really think they will. Yeah, you and I can have this conversation that we had earlier and disagree, and I'm not going to hate you or think you're stupid, right? But truthfully, who I am, that's not happening with most people I talk to. Like I really do get self-righteous with a lot of people I would have this conversation with, and I would judge the fuck out of them and be like, what is wrong with them fucking idiots, right? And that's a struggle of mine that I work on in my life, and I know it's not right, But what I guess what I'm getting at with that is, I think this conversation with two people who respect each other is few and far between. And I don't think 95% of our population is getting that. I don't think most of us are getting a place where we can actively discuss alternative ideas and truly listen to them, right? Like, I'll actually listen to what you have to say. Anybody else tells me that bullshit, I'm like, you're a fucking moron. I'm not listening. Like, and so I don't think most people are getting that. They've found a way to delete those people off their Facebook, right? They unfollowed them and unfriended them, and none of that gets presented on MSNBC or Fox News. What's that?
Echo chambers, they call that.
Yeah, and so if that's all we're putting into us, man, I agree. It is over the last 20 some years. I think the regulation on equal time ended in like 1987, they said, or something like that. And so this is recent, where we've evolved into just shouting from opposite sides of the country. And I think it's dangerous, and I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to get us back to, we are what we put into us. So how do we get back to putting better stuff into us? I just don't know.
And interestingly enough, I heard a podcast about, when partisan politics really took a sort of what I'll call a major step backwards, which is where they really started to like divide. And they talked about it being C-SPAN. When C-SPAN came online and they started showing, like these congressional hearings and these meetings and all that stuff, like what the audience responded to was politicians that were, charismatic and making these big, bold statements about the other side and how they were destroying, Americans. And, then it became like a show almost, because that was their platform to rally an audience, was through this television media, that was new. And that began it. And I'm sure now, like with modern social media, is just compounding the same problem. So,
oh my God, dude, it's so fucking ridiculous. I will walk by the TV downstairs sometimes and hear some shit like, this governor literally hates his fucking people and wants them to die. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, you really believe that dumb shit? Come on, man.
And see, I'm lucky enough to have people in my life that balance me, like Jen, for example, my wife, for example. She is, she's into advocacy. She fights against injustices that she sees in the world. And she doesn't tend to look at most people overly optimistically like I do. And she doesn't think that most people have the best interests of people, like she's a very different perspective than me. And I am grateful that I can listen to her, because it does help sort of, whatever you want to call it, like reel me back a little bit from the ledge. Because again, left to my own, I'd probably keep going in one direction, thinking that I'm right, and eventually get to that self-righteous place. But, I have people in my life that I love and that I care about, that I'm willing to sort of conversate with. And I like to say that's because I can converse in a way that's not threatening or insulting to people, because obviously I know that there are people that I've started down the road of those conversations with, and very quickly, within 2 or 3 sentences, I'm like, oh, I can tell this isn't a conversation I want to have. And I withdraw and I'm done. Yeah, and I can let it go and like walk away with being like, that's not a person that's worth engaging with in this way. And I have to do that for my own benefit, because I know what's going to happen. What's going to happen is I'm going to start, they're going to get their voice up and I'm going to get my voice up, and then we're going to be arguing because I don't agree with. And then I'm eventually going to call them stupid, because that's where it goes. It's like, you're just stupid. And I don't like to go there, I don't like it that way.
Yeah, I think, and I love that you have Jen in your life. That's awesome. I'm going to be a social worker in not too long from now, and that's what I've been trained to do, and learning about standing up for vulnerable populations that don't have a say. And I think that's where a lot of my like pushback comes, when people say people are stomping on our rights, and I'm like, there's so many vulnerable populations that if we didn't do it this way would have their rights trampled on, right? Like vulnerable populations already have their rights trampled on anyway, daily. But, so now it happens to the rest of society and now we care. But we still want to trample on the vulnerable people again. Like it's don't infringe on mine. Like fuck them people who don't matter. They're a smaller portion than us. And I think a lot of my outlook comes from looking at things like that as opposed to just how is this affecting me, and maybe that's part of the schooling I went through to look more at how this affects others, or maybe again this is something I bring up regularly. I think as humans we take credit for things that come naturally to us, right?
Yeah.
Here's a great example. Are we way too long? I don't. Who gives a fuck? Anyway, so I got a watch for my birthday, and I walk, and it registers like automatically if I'm walking or if I'm riding a bike or whatever, and I'm like, that's cool. It figures it out. It automatically tracks what I'm doing, right? And so a lot of days I'll be walking, and it'll track me as riding a bike. And so for a week and a half, I'm walking around. I'm telling my wife how smoothly I walk. I'm like, bro, I walk and it doesn't even register that I'm going up and down. It thinks I'm riding a bike because I walk so perfectly, right? So come to find out, it registers I'm riding a bike on the days I'm pushing my baby in a stroller because my hands look like they're holding the handlebars. Has nothing to do with how great I walk, right? But I'm instantly ready to take credit for something and make myself out to be good. And so a lot of this quarantine has to do with that for me, I think. It's come naturally for me. It's been easy to sit at home and not fucking see people or talk to people. I'm like loving it. I'm like, I don't want to go back. And so because it's so easy for me, I'm like, what the fuck's wrong with everybody else that they can't care about people? Well, it's not that I care about people. It's that it's easy for me, right? And so I think a lot of our shit comes into, we do what comes naturally to us, and then we want to take credit for how great we are and judge others for how terrible they are, when it might be more difficult for them to do whatever it is we're trying to do.
Yeah. And can we take a break real quick?
Yeah.
I gotta pee again. I've been drinking a ton of water because we were out in the sun the last couple days. So I've been drinking all this water and I gotta pee all the time.
Me too. I'm with it.
Oh. Okay.
Where were we at? Oh, taking credit for things.
You're talking about taking credit for things that are easy for you. Yeah, and that's, I mean, I guess for me it seems almost the opposite. Like this is difficult for me to be kind of what I would call like stuck at home, kind of what feels like doing nothing, because I am a person that likes to stay busy all the time doing things, and I'm social and I like to be out and going and doing stuff. And I've heard some people say that that's unhealthy, similar to what you were talking about earlier, that that's a way of avoidance or whatever. Um, I've thought about that and sort of for myself dismissed it, been like, no, I still, like I still engage in recovery. I still try to look at myself. I don't try to like ignore all my flaws and just keep busy all the time, but I like to stay busy and doing stuff all the time. It's just, I'm not a big sit around at home all day. I mean, so much of the time, even on vacation, I'm like, we're there at the place and we're kind of sitting there and we're just at home watching a movie, doing like a family movie night. And I'm like, I'm trying to just be there and be present, Like it's hard for me to do that, just to sit and be present with the kids. What feels like in my head, like this is a waste of fucking time. I'm watching some stupid Disney movie that I really don't care about. And in that case, I'll do it because like, hey, it's my kids and they had expressed interest in doing that. And so it's bonding time with them. Like I can justify it a little bit more in those cases than like a day like today where the kids are kind of doing their own thing. I'll do the podcast and then the rest of the day, it's like I'll just kind of be here when I feel like there's better things I could be doing.
What would you be doing today? What would you want to do today if you could?
It's hard to say. So normally what I would say is there would be something probably going on. There would be someone's birthday party, a family event, a recovery event that I might be at. Usually between those things and then what things I need to get done around my house, as far as things like cutting the grass or fixing a thing here and there, like my time stays pretty filled up. But I personally like doing social things. You know what I mean? I like going to birthday parties and events and cookouts and recovery events and hanging out with people. Like I enjoy that kind of stuff.
I was just picturing when you were talking about things to do today, because it is a beautiful looking day outside where we're at. I don't really have any grand plans for the rest of my day except to just chill out and fucking relax. I had a nice fire last night. Like my kids camped out in the tent a few nights this week. Like we've, had some interesting things. But I was thinking when you talked about what to do today, I was like, man, I miss that we did NA softball last year. Like that was a lot of fun. And if we don't do that this year, which it don't look, I don't know how, but I will miss that. That was fun.
Yeah. And so, I think it is definitely some things for some people are a little harder. The other thing, and we won't get too far into this, I guess, because then we'd be another probably hour, but, and I briefly mentioned it to you earlier, is there are some things that have become aware to me of like how, I don't want to say uninvolved I am with my kids, but normally in their day-to-day lives, the way things work is they go to school for their 8 hours. And then I get that few hours of interaction with them sort of when I get home from work and they get home from school. And that time has usually been filled with organized things that they're involved with, whether it's horseback riding or sports or, whatever, things at their school that are going on. And they're usually sort of organized and scheduled, and someone else takes care of the agenda, if you will. And then it's just my time is just being there with them, being present, supporting them, what I would call supporting them. Now, all of a sudden, none of that's there. And so my interactions with my kids have been, I don't know if superficial is the right word, but it feels much less. They do their thing. I do my thing. I come home from work. I'm tired. I make dinner and then I go work on whatever I have to work on around here. And it's like without those things being scheduled and forced, they're non-existent. And that's pretty sad for me. Like to see sort of my son has been sort of went down this road of playing video games and not really being very active. And so he's put on a little weight and he's not eating well. And, I see those things. And my discipline to been able to fix that has been absent. And it's quite disturbing, actually. It's like, I feel like I'm such a good parent and I do so well in all these areas. And it's like, well, what I do good at, what it feels like is I do good as a chauffeur to get them where they need to be. And then as a cheerleader to cheer them on for whatever they're doing. And not that those things are bad, but it just highlights areas where I'm lacking, this particular sort of stay at home. And I don't know that I recognized that in the beginning. I'm recognizing it more now that we're into it. It's like, these are some areas where I feel like I'm really falling down.
That's interesting. We don't get a whole lot of outside input as to what parenting looks like from actual outside individuals, right? Like we get society's take that we come across somewhere along the line of what we're supposed to be doing as parents. But I've found it interesting, even expressing like at times to my wife about what I feel like I'm failing at in parenting. And she'll say, well, when I was growing up, that's not what my parents did. Like I'll say something along the lines of, I feel like I'm supposed to spend more time with my kids somehow, like interact with them, play a game with them, catch something, right? And she'll say, generally growing up, not that I didn't play catch with my dad once in a while, but the majority of the time, my parents did not hang out with me, right? Like it's go out and do your own fucking thing as a kid, and then we feed you and shit. And you go on vacations with us. And it was like, even that was a revelation to me. Like, am I not supposed to hang out with my kids all the time? Like, I kind of thought I was supposed to. And so I don't think we often get that from other people. Like, that's just from my wife. And then, talking to you, I'm going to get something different. And talking to people, like, what do you do with your kids? Like, I don't spend all day with my kids whatsoever. And I'm home. I'm not working right now. So I'm here with them all day. I don't spend all day with them. Like a lot of time they are on their own unsupervised kind of do what you want time. We do have some hours in the morning where we do homework all in the same room. In the afternoon, we generally go out for an hour, to make sure they get outside for something. At night, we've been alternating free nights and watching a movie together or something like that. But I don't know the fucking rules or what proportion of my time is supposed to be with them or what's healthy. I have no fucking clue. I don't. And so I think, not to say that what you're doing is right or wrong. It was just the evaluation of we don't ever get outside input into that. Like, I think maybe we would probably be really surprised if we talked openly about parenting more often with more people. I think we'd be surprised at A, things we're not doing that other parents do, and B, things we're doing way better than we think we're doing.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. I don't know what your responsibility is, honestly. I have no idea.
Yeah, and it's definitely tough because you don't know. And I don't even think there is a right or wrong. I think each kid is different and what their, needs are is going to be different. And this is where for me, it I guess the awareness comes from. So my older two girls seem to be way better. Maybe it's just age, I could be just forgetting when they were 10, but because my son is 10 or 11, I'm sorry, he's 11. He'll be 12 this year. They seem way better at their self-management skills. Like my son, if I go up at, 2 a.m, if I'm not up there shutting the Xbox off, he's up playing video games. He's at 2 a.m, and then he's coming down and eating like snacks and shit all night. He won't come down for dinner, or he'll come down for dinner and be like, oh, I don't like this. I don't want to eat. And, leave half his plate. And then he'll be down here at 2:30 in the morning eating half a box of cereal. And, it's like those kind of things that I didn't have those experiences with my daughters. So I don't know that it's anything, almost like you said, taking credit for something that I don't even get to take credit for. Like I don't feel like I did anything that made them that way. They just seem to be better at it than he is. And he seems to be, a terrible self-regulator at anything, taking baths, putting on clean clothes. He's the type of kid, like say, if I don't check his outfit before we go out the door, he'll have fucking pants with holes in it and t-shirts with stains all over it. And he doesn't care, he hair won't even be brushed, like he's
I think
constantly trying to walk out the door with sandals on in the winter, like shit like that.
that's interesting. So, I mean, there's definitely something to girls maturing faster than boys, and as much as we do a lot of societal, raising people to be women and men, the truth is there are some differences that we start with automatically too. They're just not as drastic as we make them out to be, I don't believe. But yeah, raising twins. I had twin daughters first, and so that has been an experience of me learning that I can give them pretty much the same thing and get two different outcomes. And so it really has much less to do with what I think I'm doing than I thought it did. I thought it was like, I'm going to raise these perfect kids and it'll be great. And like, it's just not how it works. And so my kid issue right this moment, well, the main one, there's a lot of them, but the main one of my twin daughters who's 14, she'll be, going into high school next year. And she has a lot of the attitude and personality I had at that age. And honestly, if we weren't stuck at home 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I would probably swear she was getting high right now just because of the way she's acting. But I know she's not because she's not leaving the house, right? So I know it's not that yet, but there's just a disregard of consequences. I'll deal with that when it comes. I don't really care. Most of this is revolving around schoolwork and such. And it's fucking terrifying, right? It's terrifying to think, man, she could be on that road and, and just looking at the odds of, well, I have 5 kids, like odds are at least one of them's going to end up down that road, and having to think of what it'll be like to go through that. And if I ever lose one, and it's just, what the fuck, man? Like that shit is heavy to sit with, and to know that really there's nothing I can do about it right this second. And most of my parenting damage is done. Like I haven't done it perfectly. I'm trying to get better still, always, but there's damage that's been done and I can't really undo it. And it's going to be for her to figure out a lot of that moving forward, and how to best support her and not make it worse, and not live in anxiety and fear of it all the time. Like that's been a real test to what's going on in my life for the last week and a half. It's just, I don't know what the fuck to do a lot of times with that.
Yeah, and it's always hard to tell which is just part of normal growing up, because of course we have similar things with my son, but again, it's easy to go, well, he's 11. I can explain a few things. I'll try to put some hints in his brain and hope that he gets older and they start to sink in. When he gets to be 14, 15, keep my fingers crossed some of that's going to change. Right. But in my daughters, I mean, like my 14-year-old or 15-year-old now, my 15-year-old is probably more responsible than my 18-year-old. It's just, and not that my 18-year-old's not a good kid. She's a great kid. But the 14-year-old is probably more responsible, as far as I can count on her to do things that she says she's going to do, to be where she says she's going to be, to follow through on stuff she makes promises of. She's better at that stuff, and even though she's younger. And then, like say with my son, a lot of it's easy to say, well, he's 11. My expectations are ridiculous. I got to do a better job at setting boundaries and setting these things, but, and then just pray that it goes good.
You just said something that's interesting to me. I've always looked at like you talked about your 14-year-old or 15, sorry. And, her behaviors are more responsible than another person's or something. And my whole life have spent looking at that view as well. And I constantly, I hate to say that I constantly do this, but I do this pretty regularly, and this is shitty. So here we go. Confession time. I point out that my wife acts very similar in a lot of ways to my children, right? Like not picking up after herself, not putting her trash in the trash, leaving it wherever she was sitting, not putting her food dishes in the sink, just leave. Like there's ways that she does things, misplaces keys. And I'm like, that's not responsible or considerate of you, right? Come to find out, she's been diagnosed with ADHD, inattentive. Is it not responsible of her, or does she have the same problem I have, but mine's depression at times, right? where
Mm.
I'm incapable of doing things. It's not that I wasn't responsible. I just couldn't fucking do it. And so I look at that, and when I heard you say it, it really stuck out to me. I'm like, damn, I've been judging all these people by their supposed level of responsibility. Maybe this is like a mental health issue.
Well, and it's funny that you bring that up because Jen and I were just recently having a conversation about that with my older daughter, and we've seen some, like, whatever you want to call it, like warning signs that her anxiety is really high. We've seen her getting like overly emotional on things that shouldn't be that emotional. You know what I mean? Like just minor criticisms of things. She like totally breaks down and like loses her shit. And so we actually talked about recently, like, hey, as this stuff starts to open back up, we really need to get a counselor, get her into some kind of therapy or counseling. She was seeing a counselor before. She was not interested in going back to her. So, we're going to embark on finding a new one, finding someone else. So that was just a conversation we had last week. Like I say, maybe it is just a mental health thing. We need to make sure that her mental health is, because she's had some anxiety issues. She suffered some abuse, so she's been to counseling before. And it's always been a thing where we kind of let her go as long as she kind of wants to do it. And then she'll kind of say, I'm good for now. And then, she'll decide, we'll bring it up usually. Hey, you think you want to go back to counseling, or do you think you need to talk to somebody? And she'll let us know, so yeah, could be that.
And there you go. So my 14-year-old had just gotten around to stating that she wanted to be back into some counseling. She had some when she was like 9, maybe. And then it wasn't doing a whole lot, so we stopped. And then she wanted to get back into it. We had just started that. She had been seeing a lady for like a month. And then this pandemic hit. And I'm like, I talked to the lady and I'm like telling my daughter, look, you can do teletherapy. It's the same thing I'm doing with people. Like, it's really not that bad as it sounds. You talk to people in video calls all day anyway, like trying to sell her. And she just had no interest in the teletherapy. And I'm like, I don't know. That's the one crappy part of this pandemic. Like, my daughter hasn't gotten to a resource that was available to her before.
Yeah. Huh. Well, I don't know.
I don't know either.
For me, I'm like, hey, hopefully we're winding down.
It might be. Might be. Maybe this predictions of the heat killing it off quicker, and the measures we've taken already. Maybe we'll be fine all summer. Maybe we'll have a wide open summer.
Yeah, who knows? One step at a time. I'll take the baby steps. I'm good with that. Baby steps.
Yeah, I guess I gotta establish like guidelines for what is it gonna take for me to be ready to come out. Because if not, I'll just never come out.
Yeah.
I need to establish like some regulations for myself.
My boss did the same thing. Talking to him, and like I say, he's not a hysterical, irrational person. He's completely rational. Very intelligent person. And he says, I don't know. I just don't feel safe. I don't feel comfortable going out, not ready.
I'll tell you what,
public. And all I can do is just say, yeah, I respect that, not where I'm at, but I get it.
I'll tell you what I am ready for. I'm ready to go fucking golfing. I don't know about anybody else, but I am ready to go golfing, and I have been trying to talk my wife into it for like a week and a half now. I'm like, just go. I know you don't really like golf, but just go. Just keep me company. Let's do it.
Yeah, I'll go with you. I'm not very good.
Oh, I suck.
I don't even have golf clubs anymore. I have to go get golf clubs. I got rid of mine.
Dude, I don't even think I've played in like 2 years because I never fucking get there, but I'm ready. I'm ready to golf.
Yeah, I want to play too. So.
All right, we'll have to figure that out. I gotta get you off during the week, man. I don't want to play. It's all crowded on the weekend.
Yeah. Well, right now I can start taking off during the week. So
maybe you could just take like a half a day, and we could go in the middle of the day or something. I think they're making people drive their own golf carts.
Like, yeah, you weren't allowed to have golf carts.
Really? Oh, yeah. I might not want to play then. That's a little rough. All right.
Looking around the golf bag.
What the hell did we talk about today? Shopping carts. That's what we're gonna have to call this episode. Shopping carts. I don't know what the fuck we're gonna call it. I don't know, but this has got to be like 3 hours long or some crazy shit. 2.5.
Yeah. Well, we talked so long in the beginning, so that's okay. The computer's gone dead too. I was gonna have to cut it off at some point because the computer's down to like 16%. I didn't grab the cord. I just brought it in. And I was like, oh shit, the battery's going dead.
Well, that thing I sent you, that was Brutally Sober. That was Joe. He gave us a shout out, but he also made fun of our Baltimore accents, which I thought was hysterical. So
Yeah.
that was pretty funny. And I don't know, maybe people listen to this shit, maybe they don't, but I enjoy it. I had fun talking to
me
you.
too.
So I guess
fun.
we'll say goodbye to everybody, and everybody stay safe in whatever capacity that means to you, and we'll see you next week, I guess.